Good day and hoka hey, Alita Army. Welcome to the Alita Livestream, where we discuss all things to do with the movie Alita Battle Angel, the source manga Gundam, and the desired sequels. I am your host, from Denver, Colorado in the United States. My co-host is Angelus. He's from Brisbane in Queensland, Australia. How's it going there, Angelus?
Pretty good this morning. Just having my daily dose of liquid gold, as DZB23 would call it.
Yeah, he calls it liquid brown stuff, I think. And Diz, you can get your ass on the stream if you want. I sent you an invite. So anyway, we're going to have Den is going to join us a little bit later. He's running a little late, but he's going to join us. And we got a few other guests coming on. So today we want to talk about how does Alita compare with other IPs or other movie franchises. We got like 6 or 8 of them lined up here. And we're not going to be comparing them like we were comparing before, like we were seeing how well Alita would stand up to a superhero or how she would do against a supervillain or something like that. We're only going to be talking about, the movie Alita Battle Angel and see what are some of the things they have in common with other movies and some of where it's not so common, some of the how the characters are, what the likenesses are, and that kind of thing. So basically that's how we're going to approach this. And, we're going to, once again, we got some more guests coming. I think Max Tack Dry is going to show up too, I think. Okay, in terms of Alita, of course, we all know this. This is our girl right here. We know all about Alita for sure. But just a quick little refresher. This is set. The movie is set in 2563. Now, the manga that was written by Kishiro, of course, that is a little bit different. The time frames are a little different. But that's not going to be an issue here. We're going to be talking about mostly the movie. The manga was actually developed back in the early 90s, I guess, probably 1990, I believe. And then the anime, of course, came on sometime after that. I think it was mid to late 90s, I think. Does that sound right to you, Angelus? Or?
Yes, 1990, in fact.
Yeah.
93 when the anime was released.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That seems about. Yeah. It seemed right. And of course, our queen, Alita Army member number 1 is Rosa, and of course Rosa Salazar, and she's the protagonist in the movie. Now, the one thing that I think we're going to see some commonality with other movies here is that Alita is a cyborg. And we're going to see a couple of other places and a couple of other movies where the protagonist in that movie is a cyborg. Any thoughts on the movie Alita Battle Angel there, Angelus?
Just hashtag give Alita a sequel.
Yes. Give Alita her sequel, damn it. We want it. That's for sure, Oh my gosh. I just love that handle. We just had Lord Snoozington join us. How's it going, Maxie?
Oh, yeah, I'm trying to wake up, man. Oh, shit.
Yep.
He's snoozing. You should get some coffee.
Yeah, the coffee will wake you up.
You can take your coffee and your pineapple pizza and shove it.
Well, I don't know how I can shove liquid gold, but
yeah, and we won't ask where we're going to shove it either. So So anyway,
no, I'm not a coffee person. Coffee is...
Yeah, well, I think I had 4 cups today because I went to bed late last night. Maxie gave me a lot of work to do, and I went to bed late. So
I apologize for that, but somebody said I want to make this the best I can, and I took
yeah,
it.
you're right. You're right. I said that. Sure did. Yeah, we're gonna make it. We're gonna make it good too. And we
Did you have any problems with any of the notes that I made of the
No,
4 pages?
No, no, I'm pretty deep into page 2 right now. So, and
Awesome sauce.
I've been putting little green check marks and comments and stuff like that in it. So, we'll go over that later.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. You got it.
Okay.
So anyway, what we're talking about here, Maxie, is that we're comparing Alita to other IPs and other franchises, and we just kind of did a very quick review of Alita. And one of the things we want everybody to keep in mind is that Alita is a cyborg, and that's going to come up in a couple of places well, maybe more than a couple, probably 3 or 4 different movies. It's going to come up where that's a similarity between Alita Battle Angel and the other movies. And there'll be some differences too, of course. So, we're going to kind of go over that. So,
well, like I've said, all of these things aren't produced in isolated little bubbles. Everything is connected, and Yukito is quite out there in noting his influences. So, I mean, that Motorball is based off of Rollerball from 1974 and things like that. It's not. He's not saying, "Oh, I came up with this by myself. It's got nothing to do with it." No. He admits that, all of these things are part of the same stream of consciousness of humanity storytelling. So,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that movie Rollerball was pretty good, although we're not going to be going over it here. But I guess we could have included it, though. I mean, we may talk about that when we get to the did we miss anything.
I think that maybe you could just do a whole nother stream on Yukito's influences, because, that'd fill up a whole stream. And if you could get Eddie on here, that would be amazing. But cheers to that.
Or maybe that's something we could do on a Radio Chaos stream, too.
Yeah. Hey, Jeffrey! He's in chat.
Yeah, he is. Oh, another thing, Maxie, you'll be happy to hear that I kind of use the intro for Radio Chaos because I'm practicing just in case you and Angela can't show up and I have to host. So anyway.
Something like that could happen. It's
I'd be comfortable with it too, I think. Okay, moving right along, I guess. Ex Machina. I don't know a whole lot about this movie. I know it was produced on a budget of about $15 million. So that was I think it was done in 2005 too. I'm not sure. And I got there sent in 1984. I'm not clear about that one. I think it might be a future thing. I think that's probably a mistake I made there, set in 1984. But anyway,
it was 2014.
Oh yeah, that's right. It was that. Maybe that's where I messed up. I might have got my brain might have got scrambled, and I didn't put 201 in front of that 4.
Yeah.
So anyway, we just got joined by Foxfire. How's it going?
Yeah, I just lost the connection. I had trouble to reconnect with the Streamlabs, but here I'm back. Interesting. 1984 is actually, it's a quiet the miss.
That's a big.
I saw that movie. It was pretty good, and it was also part of one of those from that VFX channel. When they made the comparison with Alita. The Corridor Crew, there was that, and for that budget they were working on, they made pretty good visuals, not gonna lie, but I'm still can't get over it that they just glossed over Alita and took more time to make puns at the movie instead of reviewing it. And recently I saw also the clip of Avengers Endgame from that same Corridor Crew, and they took for that movie all the time and approached it respectfully. But
they didn't approach Alita respectfully either. They didn't approach Alita respectfully either.
They didn't at all. But Endgame, of course. And the fun thing about is when they explained Avengers Endgame, so many techniques that they demonstrated there were also used for Leader, like the actor puppet that they invented for Leader, they used also for Thanos in Endgame.
Yeah.
And I was like, you fucking assholes, you know?
Yeah.
Like, they could have really went there really deep for all those technologies they invented for that movie. And Alita is not getting the recognition for that, but they put the recognition on Endgame by explaining it there. And it was like, that made me really salty. But yeah, I'm digressing.
Yeah.
I
That's
know you're right on the same page as me, man. So don't feel too bad about it.
Well, let me pull it away from Endgame though. I want to discuss Ex Machina a little bit.
Yeah.
Anyway, what Ex Machina? I'm not going to go into the whole plot and all that, but I do know it was produced on a budget of $15 million, and I think it grossed worldwide $36 million, which is pretty small, in today's movies. But anyway, what it involves is a robot like what you see there. It's not a cyborg; it's a robot, but it has AI.
Right.
So
Yes.
the character that was I guess played by Oscar Isaac, built this robot, and his friend, I can't recall who the friend was, but anyway, excuse me, Oscar Isaac's character keeps asking him, how do you like this, this robot I built, and the guy is kept asking him, he said, well, give me some of your design. How'd you design this and stuff like that? And he would never answer him, but he was always the Oscar Isaac character was always after him to say, how do you like my creation here? How do you like my robot? And so, but anyway, to make a long story painfully longer, what happens?
I don't think that's how the saying goes, Creaky.
But anyway, what happens here is, and you probably know this, but those of you that saw the movie, but basically what happens is the guy starts the guy starts falling in love with a robot, and the robot is reciprocating, So, and it kind of goes into a thing how this guy and this robot devised this plan to shut off the security system, and how they can escape and stuff like that. So, you can see there, Alicia, is that Vikander or Vikander? I don't know.
Alicia Vikander, yeah.
Vikander, yeah. So anyway, she's the main star, and she's the person who plays the robot. And what's the robot's name, Foxfire? I can't remember.
It's Lara Croft. No,
that's
not
no, it's Ava. That's right, it's Ava. Yeah, that's what it is.
I would say Android. Robot's a little too,
Yeah.
An android's a human simulacrum, so
Right.
She's more an android.
Yeah,
a robot has not a human form, basically. Yeah, not really human form. Maybe it's a lot more like a machine, resembles more like typical machine rather than a human. Industrial robot is also a robot. But yeah, it's interesting that the machine like really played those people like hard, So it was interesting movie because it's not just that she understands human emotions, but she was able to understand the motivations and the reactions to a minute detail, and were able to a high degree to manipulate the actions because of that. That was an interesting part.
What, Maxi? What would you call Johnny Five then? Because he's sort of humanoid.
No, he's a robot, man. He doesn't resemble a human. So all androids are robots, but not all robots are androids.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I was going by Wikipedia there. Wikipedia has it down as robot, so they're wrong.
Well, so, Wikipedia is edited by people who don't know English all that well, so
yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but there's an interesting paragraph about distinctions between cyborgs, robots, and androids, and like it's all the damn time people mix those up, and usually they say robot to everything, to all of these, especially like if you talk about cyborgs that are to a degree like Alita, so where just the brain is human. They all refer to it like it's a robot. Same with the Major and Ghost in the Shell. Even when they say like 10 times in the movie, she has a human mind, a human brain, they still refer to it as a robot. It's funny.
Yeah, it's
Well,
interesting. You know,
people
that,
just don't understand the distinction. They don't
yeah,
actually lean into the language and understand the definitions.
Yeah.
They
yeah,
just grab a word that seems to work.
And some troll simply.
Well,
yeah,
some of them are trolling, yes,
yeah.
because you know you couldn't have an internet without trolls.
Right.
That's true. So anyway, I guess one of the similarities is even though you know Ava here is not, she's not a cyborg. She is a android, but she does develop a relationship with a human, which is kind of similar to Alita, you know, in the movie, developing a relationship with Hugo, although she is human. As a matter of fact, I maintain Alita is very human, even though 99 of her is machine. The best part of her, you know, is her not just her fact that she has a human brain in the movie, but you know, also that I think that is her most endearing and her most powerful quality itself is that she has a human brain and she is very human. So
Two points to that. The first one is if you include Last Order in your comparison, then there's some direct comparisons there. I won't go into that,
yes,
but you know what I mean.
yep,
And the other thing is that in the novelization, I'm pretty sure you've read that, haven't you? The novel, the
yes.
movie
Well,
novel.
no, I haven't read the novelization, but I've listened to the audio book. You know, driving
Same
back and
deal.
forth.
Same
Yeah,
deal. So at near the end, Pat Cadigan writes of Nova that he says that the people who, you know, are TR'd spend more time emoting than real humans do, like full
yeah,
blood humans, full flesh humans.
yeah,
So, you know, when you cut away the flesh, the emotions tend to ramp up because you know you make it's like you know if you lose your sight, your hearing improves and shit like that.
yeah. But you
You
know,
compensate in other ways.
yeah, in this case, you know, Ava here is, yeah, she's 100% machine, you know, whereas Alita's 99% machine, you know. I
I
guess,
wonder where you got that number from.
well, I'm just
Yeah.
throwing Gary D's, you know, I'm putting his thing into this, you know, but yeah, but they're in that regard, they're pretty close, although, you know, this Ava android is really her, all of her thought processes, all her emotional responses, and all are keyed on AI, whereas Alita, you know, is human, you know, her brain. So that's the distinction, I guess, or the difference between the two of them. Now,
I agree, Dizzy.
There's also an interesting part in the Ex Machina movie where they do a Turing test also with her. I'm not sure. Do you know the term, the Turing test?
no,
A Turing test is basically. I'm not looking at the Google, but what I remember about is if you're not told that you're talking to a machine, for at least for how long you're able to talk as a human to that robot, not knowing that it is a robot, without noticing that it is a robot, how long you take for it. And if you surpass a certain time without noticing it and without, no matter what questions or whatever you're talking there,
yeah,
then it passes this test, you know.
yes,
And that's, yeah, they, they kind of did it with Ava too, that Turing test. And yeah, and she was, of course, she passed it with flying colors, you know. But they did this partly also in For Real with an AI that was in charge of doing appointments, you know, when people were calling to our hair studio, and instead of a person, an AI was responding and with a synthesized voice. And a lot of people didn't recognize that it is in AI. They thought they were
That's because a
talking
lot
to
of
humans.
people are thick as 6 wetsuits, mate.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
You know,
some people maybe then thought, what that machine did.
There are people who can't pass the Turing test.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Biological
totally.
breathing people. So, it's not a foolproof thing.
That kind of makes you wonder if they're sentient, doesn't it?
Yeah, you could say
Well, you know
some
what?
would pass it. That's true.
Now, once again, I didn't see this movie, but it occurred to me just doing the research I did on it, which was pretty limited because I didn't have a lot of time to put this together, but I only went to Wikipedia. But anyway, it seems to me, the question becomes, is that when you establish a relationship with another being, let's just call it like that,
Yeah,
and you have an android that has artificial intelligence, and let's just say for the sake of discussion that artificial intelligence or that android has attained sentience, what does that mean? I mean, is that as similar or the same as having a relationship or even a friendship or whatever you want to call it with a human,
Well, that's one of the biggest questions of cyberpunk. What does it mean to be human? And
Yes.
that's one of the boundaries that gets very muddy when you get really, really smart machines. I mean, you think about it, a biological organism, like we only know of one species that's managed to gain sentience as far as we understand it. And I mean, it's a definition. It could change.
Yeah.
But humanity is that organism. So, we're self-referential here. So it's a little bit hard to, stand back and take a sort of a really unbiased opinion of it.
Yeah.
But, we're a biological machine. If you look at how humans are constructed, it's super complex. The human brain is one of the most complex things we know about. But the fact that we can say, okay, it's made up of these atoms, just like a machine's made up of atoms, and it does these computational things per second, and machines can do that. And it's more the self-referential. I think, therefore I am. The recognition of self, and that's where where you can ask. You can have a really, I call it an intelligent machine, but you can make it act like it's being self-referential, but is it really? Is this all a really, really clever con, or is this thing actually sentient? It's really hard to break that down and actually, I mean, you could say things like, oh, well, if you threaten to switch it off or, kill it, and, it gets upset and says, oh, I wanted to live and I wanted to do this, and I wanted to do that. How can you prove whether that wasn't programmed into it to say that as a reaction to that situation, or whether it's developed those feelings over time based on the things it's learned and it's maturing and all that sort of stuff? And then you're comparing a machine to a human, and it's not the same thing. The machine is a different construct. Unless you built a biological machine out of the same stuff and made it work exactly the same way, you can't. It's comparing apples and oranges. So it's one of those really fucking hard questions to answer.
Yeah.
Look what you're making me do first thing in the morning. Jesus.
The question to ask what makes a thing human is also it's kind of the wrong question. I think it's kind of the wrong way, because the problem we have is the question should be, what is sentience? What is a sentient being? What do we understand under that?
Yeah.
And this goes away from being necessarily human to a broader understanding. Our biggest problem about understanding sentience is that when we try to do science, we have only one point of reference, and that is humanity. We haven't encountered anything that is from a different origin but has achieved sentience. If we would have maybe the chance to meet aliens, then we would have many points of reference where we could compare and get a better understanding what is actually sentience, and then we could also extrapolate it into something like like an artificial intelligence, and we could understand better when something like that has achieved sentience. But for now, we're just sitting on one point, on one data point, and try to understand the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, Dizzy B there has a pretty good observation. If you download your brain into a chip, your sentience, if you want to call it that, are you still alive or are you a machine?
Probably both.
Well,
That's a good question.
well,
Probably both.
if
You're alive
your
in a
reactions
machine.
are 100% the same as they would be from the biological machinery of a biological brain, then yes, but then other people would argue no, because you can't die, and you need to be a sentient organism. You need to be able to die, and you can't die when you're a machine unless you get destroyed. Like you got to have you got to have a limited lifespan. So you've got this whole I'm going to die, so I value my life and rah rah rah.
Well,
It's a big question.
Yeah.
well, you technically can die. Just the way that you are taken out is the difference, because your chip can get fried, your quote unquote brain can get demagnetized if you get too
Yeah,
close
I
to a
mean,
magnetic field. And
you are probably immortal, but you are not invincible. That's actually a point. But you will die eventually, even if you are like immortal. But at one time, at least the time the universe dies, that would be latest point you would die as well. So you will die no matter what. What it could be take a long time until that.
and correct me if I'm wrong, with technology, at least the way that we know it and have it now, a human brain can make is it called synapses, or what do you call it when the human brain makes connections within itself to neural pathways or something like that?
Yeah, that's right. The neural pathway. So synapse is the basic unit of the brain. So a synaptic cell connects to other synaptic cells. And I'm not a brain physiologist, but I roughly know the very basics of how it works, and they all connect to each other. And the more you do something, get into a habit or get an idea and think about it, the more these connections increase in that area. So you can actually change the structure of your brain by how you're thinking.
So with that in mind, if you are completely 100% machine, but still have that copy of your biological programming, are you still human? Because then your technology can't make any new neural pathways. It can't advance any further. You're like stagnant. You literally can't grow.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's true, because since you are on a chip, of course, the way you learn would also be different. If that would be true, what you're saying is we wouldn't have an AI, because AI does prove that it can't learn. It doesn't learn, but you have a basic programming that is underlying, where you have some way set up, where you make up a setting. But from there on, you are hands off in the best case scenario, and the AI learns based on the input it gets. For instance, just to have an example, like the game StarCraft 2. It's a real-time strategy game that works. Basically, you have an opponent. Most times there are two people that are playing on a map, and you have a top-down view on that map, and you can control your units and send them around. And one major point of that game is that you have the fog of war, which means that you don't see everything what is going on the map at the same time. You have to send units to scout areas to see what's going on, and especially to see what your opponent is doing. And they did do the same restrictions for the machine that humans have. So it can't only see a certain aspect of the map or part of the map at the same time. It can't see everything what the enemy is doing unless it sends a unit to scout. So this machine had to work with uncertainties. It didn't know everything what's going on. It couldn't also do 1,000 or 1,000,000 operations per second like a machine could do. They limited it. so that a machine has to think like a human to beat that human. It has the same limitations than a human, same reaction times, etc., etc. They lowered the reaction time so that it had to adapt strategies that are valuable in a human scale. Otherwise, it would be simply beating it by brute force, and that wouldn't be smart. So they restricted that machine, and from there on, the machine had to figure out how to beat the humans. And it took a few thousand games, maybe a few million games, I'm not sure, but it tried different strategies, and in the end, it started to beat out humans, and they had no chance anymore, even though it had limitations. So
let me interrupt you just for a second, Foxfire. I want to welcome Dizzy B onto this stream. Good day, Dizzy B.
What's going on, fellas? This is a pretty unique combo,
Hey,
mate.
finally finishing the dunny, mate.
Yeah, mate.
Something about learning to beat.
Yeah, okay.
So just in short, AIs are interesting because they learn, and they if you give them a task, they will come up with solutions, maybe solutions you didn't even anticipate. And that's one of the big interest, what makes those things interesting, because you don't program every aspect per hand. Well, that's what we used to do until now. When you program, you have to think about all eventualities, and you have to cover them in your programming. But we want to get away from that. We want machines to figure out those things and come up with solutions. And for that, you have to learn. So if you would translate your brain or your personality on a chip, then of course the way you would function as a person would be very different to that of a human brain, basically. So you may actually end up different, maybe even in your personality, because the way you learn would be different, but you would still be learning.
Yeah, let me address something that Maxie said a while ago, about you have to be able to die to be sentient. What does that mean for us that are immortal there, Maxie? Were you saying I'm not sentient?
Well, no.
Well, he'll probably call you not sentient.
Okay,
James Cameron is not sentient, I see.
Couple of things. So it's a definition, and different people have different ideas about what the definition is. And another point that sort of wraps around what Fox is saying, what you've been saying, is that we have but one definition based on ourselves. So it's self-referential. Yes. Who's to say that our model of sentience is the only one?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I mean, if we can create a machine that is self-referential and can learn, who's to say that it's not sentient? Because its mechanism may not be the same, but the functionality is equivalent to a human. And
so what if it doesn't die? What if it's scared to die?
Well, being scared to die makes sense, because if you're self-referential and recognize that you exist, then you don't want yourself to stop existing, because then you'll stop experiencing.
Yeah.
Right. I want to come. That's an interesting point what you're saying. Like for us, that's something that could be very different on machines and on biological beings, because the will to not die basically is not something that originates from our higher thinking processes, but it's like a very basic thing. Like it's the basic programming we have that is part of us even before we really develop our mature thinking, you could say, before we even make our first thoughts. It's based on fears of not getting hurt and all this stuff. And I was like, okay, we have this as a basic instinct, but if you don't set something up in artificial intelligence, I think it wouldn't have even an instinct to protect itself. Even though it can't be as smart as it wants, but if it isn't set up as a basic functionality from the beginning, it wouldn't protect itself.
Yeah, let me give you a story before you keep going there, Fox, because I want to get everybody's take on this, and then I want to move off of Ex Machina. But anyway, you know, a few years ago, well, maybe 10 years ago or so, you know, my dog was my second wife and I were sitting on the back deck, and he was playing with a tennis ball, and the back deck was like 15 feet off the ground, you know. So anyway, he drops the ball and it rolls underneath the railing and rolls way out in the yard. It rolled a long way off, and he was only about 6 months old, and he looked up, you know, he kind of looked at my ex and I looked at him and I said, well, go get it. And that's exactly what he did. He ran all the way down. It was a considerable distance. He ran all the way down and got that ball, ran all the way back up onto the back deck, and dropped the ball in front of us. Now, who's to say that he wasn't self-aware enough to be able to perform that? He understood what I said, and he did it.
Yeah, he understood what you wanted from him in that moment. Even I wouldn't say he understands the words, but he knows what you are thinking, basically.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, though. I'm saying that.
So that's intuition, and that's something that's very hard to gauge, and it's something that's considered part and parcel of sentience.
Yeah.
So you say death. What about love? Dogs love them, like love humans more than they love themselves, apparently. So wouldn't that be the same, but on the other side of the coin?
Possibly.
I'm not sure what you're asking.
Well, you're saying that like self-aware and all that, and I'm pretty sure that Creaky was saying it about the ball, because a dog, you know, self-aware, all that sort of stuff. But on the other side of the coin, when you're saying about death and you have to be, you know, alive or whatever, and to feel death and all that, but what about love? So I'm trying to say, like with the dog, in the same thing. Does that make any sense? Probably not, but
it does to me. But
it's a little confusing. But yeah, I mean, there's creatures on this earth that, like dogs and dolphins and stuff like that, that fit some of the criteria for sentience, but there's higher functions that, like language and reasoning, like they'll reason some things, but higher reasoning. It's a very complicated distinction, and it's a very gray line as to which side of, you know, sentient, non-sentient these creatures fall under. And there's talk about, you know, in the future maybe what's called uplifting, which means, you know, pushing some of these species that are very close to sentience, just giving them a little nudge and bringing them across closer to where we are, like being able to converse like this and ask these questions. You can't get a dog to ask these questions, can you?
Well,
I mean, you could say, oh, he's a bit like this and he's a bit like that. Yeah, well, he's not going to fucking discuss how a chess computer can act like a human. Is that
us or is that them? You know what I mean? Have we just not worked out their language yet, or us? You know what I mean?
I speak basic cat because I've had 2 cats living with me for like 8 years, and I use my intuition to work out what they're saying. But they can't speak my language, so I mean, you know, it's got to go both ways.
You know, like when they're fucking hungry, everyone knows about it, don't they? Because they never shut the fuck up.
They have developed methods, of course, where they can make their needs heard.
There's a lot of body language,
especially
in higher
cats
animals.
and dogs, because those animals have partly, you could say, an accelerated evolution alongside us, because we are basically developing those animals. We are breeding them. And sometimes per accident, sometimes deliberately foster traits that make those animals understand us better. So they understand cues we are giving, especially dogs can work with basic language or basic gestures, and that's not something that they had from the beginning. It is they learned it from us, and their brains have developed because of that. And you can see it because there are not many animals able to basically recognize themselves in a mirror. Dogs, for the most, can't do that too. But I have seen some dogs that are able to do that. They're just starting to recognize themselves in mirrors. Not all of them, but there are a few who did that. When you see some videos, and you can clearly see when they're seeing themselves in the mirror and they're reacting to themselves in a way when you see that he was looking at it and he was looking at his ear in the mirror, and he raised that ear and then he touched his own ear with his paw. So you could see that he was not thinking of the dog as a different dog, but he was looking at himself and was thinking, "Oh, that's my ear," basically, and
Just like
that gave it
when
away,
Alita touches
So
it, yeah.
some are they are developing. So, and I think some apes can do that too. Look into a river and see themselves and stuff. And this is a sign of higher sentience.
Well, it's a sign of higher thinking. The definition, like I said, the definition of sentience is somewhat malleable. I would compare what you're talking about to different stages of human development. So there's periods of development. I mean, Fox, you haven't had kids yet, but I've seen this firsthand. That that and like Cricky, you've got kids.
Yeah, I got 3 kids.
Yeah, so you watched your kids grow up. You know that period where they're babies, they're just starting to toddle, and you show them themselves in a mirror, and at a certain point they think it's another baby, and then at another point they point at the reflection and they point at themselves, and that's when you know that they recognize themselves in the mirror.
Well, let me clarify there, Maxie. I have 3 stepkids. I only watched one of them grow up. So
well, you've probably seen it once then, because you can't really miss that moment unless you're just not there. But these are points of development, important points of development in the brain morphology of the child as they're turning into and slowly turning into an adult. So it's one of those things that Foxfire was talking about, where you program a computer and it's in a fixed state. It doesn't change, and it has to have everything programmed into it to react to everything, and it can't react to things it hasn't had programmed into it. That's your classic machine. And it can fake the Turing test for a little while, but if you find an instance that it hasn't had the information given to it already, it can't deal with it. And learning AI systems, and I was actually reviewing a paper just last night about how all this sort of works, and you've got to spend time training them. Just like a human's got to spend time learning, you've got to give it data sets, and it's got to spend time ingesting them and working through them with what it knows, and then adding to its informational set, and it's got to start linking things together just like a human brain does.
Yeah.
And when you're creating a facsimile of the way a human develops, that's when you're getting close to creating a sentient machine.
Let me answer a really important question that's come up. The answer is 2.
Okay.
How many grandkids does Creaky have? It's 2. So.
Okay, cool.
Before knowing what else Creaky has awaiting us, there's like at least 2 other IPs that I know of that pretty much touch on this exact topic.
Yeah.
But before we do move on to the next one, I just want to sum up Ex Machina by saying, despite being an android, as some of you call it, there's a lot of, I guess, I wouldn't maybe say similarities, but a lot of parallels that it has, that Alita's story also has, especially when it, well, at least I feel it has, when it approaches topics like humanity and sentience.
Yeah, I want to watch this movie at some point, but
Yeah, I've got it sitting there along with a whole bunch of other stuff I need to find time to watch. I just wanted to say one thing about our last 10 or 15 minutes discussion before we move off it.
Yeah.
The thing about cyberpunk is that it's asking how much can you take away and still be human. The discussion that we've been having about dogs and such is what needs to be added to become sentient.
Yeah.
So it's sort of the what can you strip away before you're no longer human. what do you need to add before this creature becomes sentient like us? So that's the two sort of sides of the coin.
Yeah, that's kind of like what you're
That's
saying
true.
when you say like us, right? Because now, I saw Enigma make a text, put something in the chat about, oh no, did somebody say aliens, but, with an alien as an example, would they, I hate to go off on this because we want to move off this pretty soon, but, I am so sure that aliens, because have a different biology and that kind of thing, that their sentience would be different than ours too. So
Yeah, there will be differences and some similarities. You could assume that when they are based on the similar elements, like having carbon as their basic fundamental structure in the bodies, there are theories where there could be even silicate-based life forms somewhere else, because silicon has similar properties like carbon. But in general, most people would assume that if there's other life out there, then it's carbon-based. And based on the physics and how those is, you would have some similarities even across light years of differences and stuff. But it's hard to tell until we get there and see that with our own eyes. I have also one last point to add. It's what Ray was saying about the bits of artificial intelligence and about constructing and adding stuff. And we are at a point where we can create AI, but this AI has always a very narrow tasks to solve, and it can't only work in those narrow tasks. It can be very sophisticated and beat us out, like in chess or in Go or StarCraft, or even manipulate the stock market or whatever. But it can't take those knowledges and those things it has learned and then apply it on a different field. That's basically what in the AI research is called the holy grail of artificial intelligence, is bringing the AI to a stage where it is able to apply what it has learned in one field to a complete different field and excel there too without intervention. And that's they call it like AGI. It's like artificial general intelligence, and that could be still. It could be around the corner. It could be also still be decades away to get there. And but if they achieve that, then those machines will become really interesting.
yeah, let me interrupt you there, Foxy, just for a minute. I want to welcome Den. Hey, brother, what's happening?
Oh, the boy who
So
still
what you're
lives.
saying is Alita is a better wife.
Oh, hello. Can you hear me? I think I was
Yeah,
muted.
can you?
Yeah, we can hear
Hey,
you.
how's it going?
How's it going, man?
Hey, man.
Very good. How's it going,
You-
Fox? How
you-
you been?
I'm doing fine, man. Nice to hear you. First time for a long time, man.
Yeah, same for you. I thought I'd hear you last weekend, but I guess not. How you
Yeah,
doing,
what
David?
what we're
Oh,
doing,
okay,
Dan,
go
is
ahead.
we are comparing these different movies. We kind of got off on a very important subject about AI and sentience and stuff like that on Ex Machina. But that's kind of where we are. We're comparing Alita to these other movies, see where the similarities and where the differences are.
I liked that movie. That was pretty good. I actually was just watching a video about it last weekend.
Yeah, I want to watch this movie.
You never seen it?
No, I like Alicia Vikander too, so I'm sure I'm going to like it.
But here comes the real reason of why you want to watch it then, eh?
Hey, how's it going? How's it going, man? How you been?
What's going on?
See, listen, in Ex Machina, am I allowed to cuss on this?
Yeah,
I
yes,
do.
yeah, man. Hell no.
I
we
just
don't
remember
really
I was semi drunk when I was watching it, and he gets to fuck really hot robots. Like there's this Asian one, and I don't know, man. I was like, okay, why not? And you don't have to feed them. You know what I mean? You just buy food for one person, and you still get to smash.
You have to
you
feed
can tell
them
Den's
input.
on the stream, can't you? Den comes on and we go straight there.
Everything goes to hell.
Hey, how's it going? How's it going, Ray? How you been?
Some things don't change, Den. How you doing?
Yeah. Well, let me move on to this, guys. We've been on this
Step by step while
about
you
45 minutes. Okay,
Oh,
Ghost
that
in
one.
the Shell.
Hey,
Mhm.
Creaky, my friend. Oh, there he is, Doc Joe.
Howdy.
Hey, hello, Doc Joe. Everybody on here except you, we all know each other. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Joe.
Ray just pinged me and
Hello,
said that.
Doc Joe. Everybody on here
You need to
except
turn,
you, we all know each
Joe.
other.
You need to turn down your YouTube to zero. Just
Or you
cut
can
the volume.
mute the YouTube. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear Ray telling you to turn it down.
Tell us a little bit about
doesn't
yourself,
it?
Joe. Oh, he's
He's
having,
got all sorts of audio problems. Here we go.
yeah,
Okay,
Joe.
yeah.
Yeah, we can hear. Can you hear us?
Can you hear us, Joe?
Anyone
Oh,
think we're on
Joe.
Radio Chaos?
Yeah.
Chaos.
We're a lot more
Ready.
chaotic in Radio Chaos.
You're muted, Joe. You're muted somewhere.
I'm muted
Ex
somewhere.
Machina.
There we
you
go.
Now we can hear you.
Sorry,
All right,
I had to change my audio device. Sorry about that.
Joe, I know you know Maxie, but I'm the Muskogee Creek. I'm the host and the stream manager. But tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm Joe Sweeney. I'm a researcher, and when Ray said that you're talking about artificial intelligence, particularly artificial consciousness, sentience, what it is, I thought, yeah, I have to be involved in that. Briefly, because I'm absolutely flat out. But my passion is actually how people learn, how people develop ideas. And my doctorate was in educational technology, which of course has an aside to that. And for my sins, I also look into what most people would call computational linguistics. In other words, how language forms.
So maybe you'll be able to explain to me how Maxie developed this delusion that pineapple doesn't belong on pizza.
Oh God! It always comes down to that, doesn't it, Davo? Jesus.
Well, it's actually bizarre because I've actually had a discussion about that a little while back, and it's exactly the same thing about why people have fashion. It's purely a cultural construct that, you know, there's nothing that says pineapple should not or shouldn't go on pizza. There's nothing that says a man must not wear a dress or must wear a bow tie or whatever else. These are just social constructs. They're fashion, and fashion changes over time.
It also tastes delicious.
Yeah. But so does balut, which is, you know, unfertilized duck eggs. You know, it's all fashion.
I should warn you that Joe is also an excellent cook, so he knows all about food.
I'm making 6.5 kilos of bacon. It's about to come out and go in the oven.
Anyway, Doc, I want to ask you another question because I also want to know why Den thinks Android 18 is a better waifu than Alita. I just want to know that thought.
Yes.
Yeah, I can't speak for that.
But we have covered here a lot of topics while you were not there, talking about Turing tests and AGI and all that stuff. I think that maybe it would be cool to hear your takes on that. I'm not sure if it's correct in your understanding, but I would like to hear your view on that stuff too.
Yeah, the Turing test is a really interesting one. I actually don't think the Turing test is going to shape up to be a very good test of what artificial consciousness will be. Bear in mind, when you get into the field of artificial intelligence, the first thing is that most people mistake what artificial intelligence is. Yeah. It's basically very large statistics. So park what we currently call AI off to the side. Let's look at sentience or artificial consciousness. There is currently a massive global effort, I think it's about $10 billion funding, to create an emulation of the human brain. And that would be artificial consciousness. You're literally trying to model the neurological processes of the brain. However, my strong belief and what I actually do for a living, how I get paid, is the future of work. Is, you know, it's all got to come down to economics. I actually think that that type of modeling, that type of sentience, is pretty useless because people are cheaper than the machines required to run that. It's that simple. We are incredibly cost effective at creating consciousness, the human form. So then you'd say, okay, what would an artificial consciousness that's economically viable, that would actually give us a benefit, look like? The first thing is, you guys remember that show, Person of Interest?
No.
Vaguely. Okay. In that, yeah, it was a series, and they had an AI in that, which was basically, it scans in parallel every, you know, it was like the ultimate Big Brother. Then we found out it was partly true. But if you think about it, an artificial consciousness has to do something that humans can't do, and massively parallel thinking is one of those things. So your AIs of the future, your artificial consciousness that we need to be thinking about, stuff that will actually hit us, will be something that, one, can hold trillions of conversations at the same time, all passing the Turing test, but they're all connected. So this thing is as multiple personalities you could possibly believe, and that is scary, powerful stuff.
Yeah, it is.
Sounds like Google Home.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. And that's probably where it's going to have the biggest economic impact. So imagine, you know, the movie Her, where you've got the single, you know, it feels like you're talking to a single machine. No, you'll be talking to a slice of a global consciousness.
Yeah.
And the potential for that to manipulate humanity, or for humanity to manipulate that, is something that we need to take very seriously. I'm not a big believer in the doomsday scenario and all that sort of stuff, because, you know, we can turn off the power. We can unplug it. But
I also mentioned before that we make the mistakes that we humanize the machines too much. Like, one big aspect of what is a big difference between us and the machine is we have a survival instinct, but machines don't have that necessarily. No matter how smart they are, why should they have the instinct to preserve themselves when we don't give that in the core programming in? You know, why should they conclude that they should exist over not existing? So,
Maybe
and
when
why
you
should they defend
outsmart the
themselves?
programming.
Yeah.
yeah, there's a wonderful short story by an Australian author whose name I've forgotten, called Starfish, and they talk about that type of difference. If an AI, and I'm not using a full artificial consciousness that I was just talking about, if a very sophisticated AI that's taking in massive amounts of data determines that its survival is not optimum for the outcome of which it is aiming, it will destroy itself. And that particular story, it sets off a nuclear device. Boom. For the benefit of the planet, not of humanity. So we are, you know, we're getting to a stage where these statistical models that these things are coming up with are extremely difficult to unpack from a human perspective, because that's what they do. They do stuff that humans don't do very well. But the survivability issue is an interesting one, because I think when you get to that artificial consciousness, you actually do run into a risk of where the system says, not only am I doing a purpose, but I can think about what that purpose means to me as a sentient entity. And that's the difference between sentience literally is self-reflection, the ability to know that you exist. And then does that inherently have a survivability issue? If we look at all the other life forms on the planet, all the way down to microbes, the answer to that is yeah. we try and survive, or at least we try and reproduce as fast as possible, and survive till that point.
That's the point. Yeah, I can agree with that. That most life forms, at least since they are all carbon based and follow a specific pattern, evolutionary pattern, it is, of course, they are there because they have this instinct. You know, every being that has not this instinct would die out, basically. And so maybe it's also an argument that when machines develop and go through different stages and maybe have to find ways to exist. Maybe those AIs that don't have that, they get deleted or whatever. Maybe you will have at 1.1 AI would think comes to the point, I have to defend myself or whatever to keep existing. It could be could get to that point. So
yeah. But one thing I'm pretty sure of, things like Ghost in the Shell, certainly the Ghost in the Shell anime was just masterful. The Ghost in the Shell movie was I cried.
I don't know. I
cried so
think Ghost
much.
in the Shell as a movie, it gets more hate than it deserves. In my opinion,
I agree.
it doesn't like cover all aspects that we know from the anime, and it mashes together a lot of story and points from different parts, not just from the anime, but also the series, from standalone complex.
Yeah.
And maybe they tried too much at once.
I think it suffers from the same problem that the very first Dune movie suffered from, trying to cram too much story into a media that just doesn't work. And that's what it was disappointing to me, because I had such high hopes. I actually like Scarlett Johansson. I think that she can portray this very well. So I didn't I didn't get dragged into that whole issue around ethnicity and so forth. But and the movie was visually stunning. I actually really liked the look of the movie, but it just felt like, I think you're right. It felt like they got a whole bunch of sponges and squished them together.
Yeah.
What's your take on Alita?
I really like the leader. I know that Ray
dragged him off to see it. I said, "You've got to see this."
Has he read the manga as well?
No, he hasn't.
No. I was going to say, with your background, you'd probably find it out of this world.
Yeah, look, one of the things which I love about Japanese culture in general is their incredible. Actually, I think it was in the tagline for the original Ghost in the Shell movie, which is the years 2044 or whatever it was, and humans love machines, and that's very much part of the Japanese culture. And there's real world illustrations of that. During COVID, they've had the effectively, you'd have to call them dying robots. They're robots which will hold the hand of people who are suffering from COVID, or people who are very aged. These robots will actually take care of them, give them the physical support that, quite frankly, the Japanese just don't have the staffing to control. So there's a real, I don't know if that's uniquely Japanese, going back to fashion, pineapple on pizza, or if this is something that maybe they're just ahead of us. I do not know. That's one of those great sort of things that cultural experts and philosophers will understand. But I'm sorry, I'll just focus on AI and the future of work.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So anyway, some of the similarities between Ghost in the Shell, and I agree with you, Doc. I think I liked the movie, but you're right. It just seemed to have something lacking, I guess. I can't put my finger on it. But anyway, it's very similar to Alita in some ways. Like, she's a cyborg, just like Alita is, she's certainly, it's based on a manga like Alita is, and it's certainly part of the cyberpunk, genre, So very, very much like Alita in that regard, she doesn't have the big eyes, but that's okay, So
also, both movies are a story of self-discovery. When you listen, I've recently listened to the premiere event of Ghost in the Shell, and the way they were wording it and how they tried to explain and sell the movie and the ideas to the audience. It sounded so similar in so many points, especially everything that was about how the Major is a story of self-discovery, where she is missing parts of her memories of her past life, and she tries to get to the bottom of the barrel to try to understand where she comes from, what her purpose is, what she's doing in that world, and the more she progresses, the more she uncovers and gets flashbacks and all that stuff. So it's kind of they had a similar approach. Just the conclusions were, of course, a bit different. Like at the end of the movie, Alita discovers herself as a warrior, and from there on goes her own path in that world. And for the Major, it's about coming to terms with her past and accepting who she is now. because she has lost her old life. She wakes up in a body that isn't hers. Like she has some kind of body dysphoria. You could say she feels foreign in that body. She was born as a Japanese and now wakes up in a Caucasian body. So there's also a big point why I didn't buy into that whitewashing thing, because
Yeah.
the major point of this movie would have been moot if you had cast an Asian woman
Yeah,
for her.
I think there's fairness in that, and it's sort of the exploration that they've tried to go through in what's that movie on? I think it's on Stan or Play or whatever. The one about the body swapping, Carbon.
Altered
Carbon.
Carbon, yeah.
Yeah, Altered Carbon.
That's Netflix.
Yeah, oh, it's Netflix. Okay, God, they're all the streaming services, with COVID. Yeah, we have all the streaming services.
Yeah.
Hitting me in the face. Yeah.
Actually, Lata Kalogridis, who we had on the Alita Livestream a few weeks ago, wrote that. She was one of the screenwriters.
Okay.
Yeah.
I actually really want to get into it, but unfortunately, my incredibly intelligent wife, she's much more John Grisham and that's true crime than sci-fi. So although she's a big Star Trek nerd, but we'll get there. We'll get there.
By the way, the doc has a really good question. I'm going to go ahead and put it up there in the chat. But anyway, will AI systems develop some kind of high-level concept of the universe? That's...
Well, yes. So it's the universal constant, which was actually referring to Ray's comment on the selfish gene. Because if the selfish gene is a universal concept, a universal definition of what life is, if all life tries to multiply and develop itself and learn more about the universe, and artificial consciousness arrives, then we have to expect, if that is actually a universal constant, that they will try and expand.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I know. Go ahead, Doc. You go ahead.
Oh no, go on, because I'm interested in how all of these Alita and so forth, all these shows, they portray AI as being very human, and I don't think I think it's very unlikely to be human. So imagine if you were to rewrite Alita or Ghost in the Shell. Actually, Ghost in the Shell is probably closer to it, but imagine rewriting Alita, where Alita can take her identity and multiply it. As long as there's hardware, as long as there is sufficient bodies for her. Now, we know that she doesn't have her own body. She's very comfortable moving bodies. Now, imagine that she can take her consciousness and multiply it across multiple of those entities, but still remain fully linked, still remain one intelligence.
Are you sure you've never read the manga?
No, I haven't. But this is the sort of...
so comfortable moving between different bodies is, I think they picked it up like not directly, because the point where Alita was written for the movie was where Mars Chronicles actually didn't exist yet, but Alita's like a cyborg from the very beginning. She has a human brain, but since she is from her childhood or on in cybernetic bodies, she has not the same concepts of like a human has. A human will automatically try to protect its limbs and is very afraid of pain and all that stuff. I think she can also feel some kind of pain, but she has not the same idea that, if I lose my limb, it's gone. So they can simply attach a new one. So she has a huge, she can take more risks and act in a ways that will put off other people by surprise, especially in a fight, because she would sacrifice an arm to win the fight. Yeah, easily.
Yeah, and that came through very well. Yeah, and the torso. That came through really strongly in the movie. I have to say that was one of the more interesting fight scenes with the dogs and all the way going down. She gets the absolute hell beaten out of her. I actually really like movies where the protagonist is not, is absolutely capable of being hurt and destroyed. And it takes on a really interesting play when that character isn't afraid. And it's not just that, it's not just teenage rebellion, risk-taking. She is actually an older soul than even what's presented in the movie. And I found that a really, almost a dissonance.
Right. And she's like, she has a really old soul, you could say.
Well, let me.
Yeah.
I want to jump in here for a minute because I want to bring Den in because for one thing here, I want to get Den your take on the difference between Alita and Ghost in the Shell, but kind of bring Android 18 into this because she's kind of similar too, isn't she?
Well, I've never seen Ghost in the Shell, and I've never seen the movie. I've never seen the anime or anything. My wife could probably talk about that, but because she watches anime. But for Android 18, there's not much to say other than the fact that she was just a young girl who was taken and used as a template to create a cyborg. But I think that the one that I think compares more favorably to Alita would be the one I mentioned last time I was on the stream, and that's Cortana from Halo. Her being an actual AI herself. And who here has read Last Order? Everyone who's going to read Last Order has read Last Order, right?
Yeah, I've read.
Yes, and if you're not going to read Last Order by now, I mean, come on, you pretty much know. So minor spoiler.
Sounds like something I need to read.
You do.
Minor.
Getting onto it, Max.
Last Order it basically is the sequel to the manga that Alita was based on. But in Last Order, you find out that at some point Alita has a brain chip and not an actual brain. She has an artificial mind, and so that means now she has an artificial body and an artificial mind, meaning that there's no humanity, no physical humanity left in her. Yet it was based on a human brain. You see what I'm saying? So she's trying to figure out. How human actually is she at this point?
Yeah.
And
but you're you're not talking about the original Alita, right? You're talking about the other Alita, right?
Yeah, the brain chip Alita.
That's a bigger spoiler. Y'all add more to the spoiler than was needed. But as far as we know, this is our Alita. It's brain chip Alita. And so, but then there's also Cortana from Halo, who also has nothing organic about her body, yet her mind was based on, I don't know how based in science this is. I'm not a neurologist, nor am I versed in AI, but as far as I know, her mind in the game, in the canon of the story of Halo, is supposed to be mapped beat for beat off of the neurology of an actual living person. So it acts like an actual living brain. And she's very human in her emotions, yet she has no physical body or anything. She's an AI, but she almost thinks that she's a human, even though she knows she's an AI and can do AI things like hop from place to place. You know what I mean? And there's that scene in Halo 4 talking about Master Chief, who was raised in the military since he was 8 or 9, and he became a cyborg. He becomes a cyborg later on. And there's a scene where Cortana asks him, "You're going to tell us later on which one is more of the machine and which one's more of the human." Because Cortana, something just happened. Cortana's broken and crying and feeling emotions, and Chief is just like, "We have to move," just completely flat and emotionless. And so I just thought that's a good comparison, talking about Alita coming from a human brain to complete artifice, I guess is the word for it, and Cortana being, I guess, in a way mapped from a real brain but made artificial. I guess in an artificial manner. I just thought it's an interesting comparison.
Yeah, there's so much to unpack in that one. The European Artificial Brain Project actually seeks to do exactly what you're talking about there. Map and model the human neurology so that you can simulate it. And one of the reasons for that is, one, we can take really good brains, we can scan them, because we can actually scan at a molecular level now, and potentially upload those scans into a virtual environment and thus live forever.
How many gigs is that?
Lots. That's actually big.
It's like half of Call of Duty Modern Warfare at this point, from all the updates have given you.
But here's the interesting thing. Even if we were able to do that, even if you could take the human brain, scan it, put it into storage for a while until the compute power can run this stuff, what happens if that compute power is running so that we are maybe only, the brain is only running at about 1/100th of its current speed? Suddenly everything would look really fast to that consciousness. I
heard about that in one of my space shows, where like if humanity was to live around like black holes or like really dim stars with low energy outputs, it could almost look like we're living at a normal speed, but at incredibly large amounts of time.
But only from an outsider. I'm actually talking about the view, because if you're in that near event horizon, if you're close to that, time is slowing down, yes, but only outside. For you, everything is still normal because
I was
everything
talking-
within you is this.
Not talking about like relativity. I mean like as if like say like a really dim star, like I don't know, like a white dwarf or something. Because it's outputting so little amounts of energy, we wouldn't need that much energy if we were moving at an incredibly slow pace. You see what I'm saying? The computing power we would need, I guess. You know.
Yeah, entropy theory. Yeah, potentially. I hadn't heard that one. That's an interesting one. I'm going to go look that one up.
So it's like that movie where they go to the planet. Was it Interstellar or the other one where a couple of minutes there is like a few years back on Earth. So that would be like what you're saying.
Yeah.
No, actually, because that's relativity. That's actually
relativity,
like time actually slowing down in it or moving differently because space is bent or whatever. This is
But not
like,
for the people
like a plant.
there.
Like a plant, you know what I mean? Like, a plant, I guess to us doesn't really look like it's a living thing. Like maybe if you can like put a human mind and make it slow down, I guess is what the theory is. Make the processes move so slow. You see what I'm saying? That it doesn't need that much energy. So you can, so I guess a civilization could survive around something incredibly dim that puts out a little energy, like a black hole or like a white dwarf or
Tavo's brain.
like that. Like my brain, you know what I mean? After all the booze I put into it, you know?
Yeah.
That's something I have to look up, and I don't know the name of the theory. I really don't. I just saw that in one of the millions of space shows I watched.
I don't know how far along it is, but when you're referring to that almost makes me think of what was it, iRobot?
Oh,
And how they developed it. Yeah.
Luke Skywalker says no, Angelus.
There's a few stories which didn't quite make the translation to the big screen, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually didn't mind that movie either. I love the traffic scenes. I love their view of traffic, but yeah.
I just wanted to touch on what the doc was saying before about how when we make AI or androids or whatever, they won't be like us. Well, what if? Well, I think like all the movies and everything that's happened, even though they're movies or whatever, but maybe they will be more like us because they're made by us. Does that make any sense? Like, I reckon that's
their
how they will be.
Yeah, their peripherals, which might be, a cybernetic humanoid-esque body, would probably look like us so that we can pretend that they are our friend, but their intelligence, it'll be very different. There's a really good Australian movie, I've just thought of it. It didn't get a lot of love, but it's very thought-provoking. It's very slow, so it's more of an art house movie called I Am Mother. And
I saw that one. That was pretty good.
Yeah, and I get why it was a little bit, not exactly the most accessible movie, but the robot, the intelligence in that wipes out most of humanity and then repairs it.
Big spoiler.
That's well that's the sorry spoilers, but that's the sort of intelligence which I think that's one of the more realistic types of intelligence that we might see, and likewise, it's that doomsday effect. Will it actually have our best interests at heart? How far will it go to, given the fact that it doesn't have the same sort of emotional connection or emotional development that a human is meant to have? Will it be? There's huge questions in that issue of the singularity, which now it doesn't mean that we can't enjoy a Leader or She or Ghost in the Shell or any of those other movies, because I actually love this idea of something that is not quite human, an entity that's not quite human, because in good science fiction, the role of that is to show us what it means to be human. They're actually a razor so that we can reflect on what it would take for us to be better humans, not just physically, but emotionally, morally, and so forth. And that's where that's where good sci-fi storytelling really comes in. A what if, and then let's explore what it means to be human.
Right. That's I have to get to this I'm Mother movie later. I've put it on my list. to go into Ghost in the Shell, I mean, it's not actually about AI, but it goes. There is still some themes that go into the direction that Alita and Ghost in the Shell cover. That still goes the same direction, even though both heroines are not artificial intelligences.
Mm.
And for what is interesting for Ghost is like and another aspect is like how everything feels like so sterile, you know, so it's like cold and there's an approach there where you can feel basically that the major feels like really foreign in that world, not just in our body, but like the science, the society is also feels like it's just, you know, I have just only more specific you know, look and feels in my brain because I've seen it like 4 years before I have to rewatch it again. But what is a current theme is like how she feels like disjointed to everything and sometimes even to herself, and that's was a really uh, interesting part. While Alita is a way more colorful movie in from the emotionally point, because she's like the moment she springs up to life, she's whirling around. She's like so positive and energetic and enthusiastic, you know. And the major is like the polar opposite in the character, you know, where she's like cold and lean back, just observing the environment and try to understand what's going on. And she doesn't jump in head first, you know. And Alita is so like she's passionate. She jumps in first and tries to and ask the questions a little bit later, you know, and she cries, she laughs a lot. So I can see why also when people look at those two movies may prefer even Alita a lot more at points, because it's also emotionally probably more accessible than Ghost in the Shell is. Like the major is like in many points an introvert, while also Alita is like extrovert, you could say. I'm not sure how you guys think about it, but that's my takes on those both movies here.
Well, I know one thing, that both of them are really good fighters. So
The only scene I had seen of Ghost in the Shell was on YouTube. It was like a 30-second clip. And there was a guy, like maybe in his like 20s, but he was like a nerd and a virgin. And he was sleeping naked in the bed with her. And then she was like, she was like asking him, like, do they want to do it or something like that? And he was like blushing and shit. I was like, man, what the fuck is this anime? You know what I mean?
What Ghost in the Shell are you watching now?
I don't want to watch this. No, it's from Ghost in the Shell. That's what it said. It's like a scene where she's like naked
Mate.
in bed with like some nerdy 20 or
I think
20
you
something
were
year old
watching
virgin.
the other version, man.
You're watching the porn version, Ghost in the
Yeah,
Shell.
mate.
This
It was on YouTube though.
this wasn't the Pornhub special Ghost of the Sex, was it?
This was the parody.
I finally did
dear.
find this movie I wanted to. I told Foxfire about this movie in 2020, last year when I saw it. But this is a movie I wanted to talk about. It's rated 6.3 on IMDb. It's called Archive. I don't know if you guys have seen that one,
no.
but it's a guy who's trying to develop AI, and
Yes.
he's trying to put it into a robot. And he has like different iterations of the same robot and AI. So like there's
Yeah.
like a 1.0 version. It's like this blocky Nintendo looking robot with like very basic thinking. It's and they like categorize it at like a 3rd grade level. And then there's like a version 2 where it's kind of more humanoid looking, and it's got like it thinks at like a 12-year-old level. And then finally he gets like a
concept.
version 3. You know, it looks far more human, and it thinks it like an adult woman's level, and he basically makes a woman. And spoiler alert, he basically recreates the mind of his dead wife.
Of his dead wife.
And,
Yeah, that is a really high concept movie. I love that movie. It failed a little bit on execution, hence its lowest score, but I love movies like that.
Also, you know which movie I'm talking about there?
Yeah.
Which was
Joe
that
has
called
watched
again?
so many movies.
It's called Archive.
Because there's another one similar to that, but with Keanu Reeves called Replicas.
Yeah, I saw that one too. This is better than Replicas, I think. Replicas wasn't too bad,
Yeah.
but I think this is a little bit better than Replicas because Keanu's good at shooting guns. Better than he is at.
What we are talking about that, of course, the Matrix, that we are not talking about that one. I mean, that one is also the elephant in the room here.
Which one's that? Sorry.
About Matrix, that's basically the elephant in the room. That we are not talking
Yeah,
about.
but the problem with the Matrix is that they get their heads stuck up their own ass way too much in those fucking film series. I'm sorry, but the first Matrix was great.
Can we
The
just
second
exactly?
Matrix-
Yeah. So somebody asked me why did they make the other two movies, and I said it's all about that green falling down. It wasn't the letters on the screen.
Yep.
It was such a perfect. I actually think The Matrix was one of the most perfect movies ever made. The first one. It was totally self-contained. You could watch it backwards, and it would be still completely understandable. The thing was masterful. Okay, you know, the whole idea about, you know, using humans as batteries sort of totally defeats the, you know, we were talking about the star and low energy
Which
and so forth.
apparently was
Very
studio
good
interference,
about,
actually.
About that point with the batteries, because
Yeah, that was
the
apparently studio
batteries was
interference.
not the original idea. I heard the
Oh,
studio
thank God for that.
paused it on the Wachowski brothers because the other thing the studio thought the people wouldn't understand. And the original idea is why the machines took humans, because it doesn't make sense, because they have fusion reactors. You know, they operate chips. They have enough energy. It never made sense. They needed the humans because humans are able to think outside of the box. They needed the human mind
That makes more
for their
sense.
own
Yeah.
operations. So they stole basically the human attributes and plugged it into their machinery to gain consciousness, to gain access to those functionality. They wanted creativity. They couldn't have it on their own. And that's
That makes a lot more sense. That makes so much more sense.
So many machines are also
Yeah.
completely obsessed with humans. Like even Agent Smith is obsessed with humans. The Oracle is obsessed with humans.
Yeah.
Like, either they hate them or they love them. But they
So we
can't
basically
without-
become peripherals. Like a phone
Yes.
is a peripheral to us now. We become a peripheral to the AI.
we are
Yeah,
just
Okay,
Some
in that
gyms are
context,
like that
I-
now. You pedal on the machines and that, and it charges the power for the gym. Same shit, different bucket.
if they had implemented that concept, I don't think the people would be like completely thrown off. I don't know why
No.
studios
Yeah.
are smoking pot. You know,
they
Well, it's
definitely.
because-
the movie far beyond what we got. You know,
Yeah.
People liked guns, lots of guns, and then when we
Yes.
grew up and got older, we liked more of the high concept parts about it. You know what I mean? It was like one of those movies that you can grow up with. You know, when you're a kid, you like the shooting. When you got older, you like the theories. Studio interference is sometimes a good thing, sometimes a bad thing. Because as you can see, when the Wachowskis got more control, more creative control, they made scenes like Neo talking to the what's his name, the architect or whatever in the second one. Like, I'm sorry, I get it. You know, if you're a tech guy, that's real cool. You know, you might enjoy that. But that just shows you how far up your own ass you had to be to write something like that. I'm sorry.
the batteries thing was always bullshit. You know that.
Yeah. I'm glad to hear that because I didn't know that. I'm not one of these people that goes and digs into movie lore and all of this. I just look at what the finished product is, and I like high concept films. And The Matrix was this incredible blending of super high concept, with that one exception. And now I know that was a studio thing, so I'll forgive it. But everything else, what they didn't say in the movie was as important what they did say. I actually think it was a really, really good exploration. And the idea of this sort of Gesalt universal intelligence sitting over the top of all these poor trapped humans, that's something which has been done many times in science fiction. I just think it was done perfectly in The Matrix, and they got to shoot a lot of guns. So, hey, double win.
Yeah, we
If
If you like high concept, I would
incredible
Go
style,
ahead.
incredible visuals. They progressed, you know, the way movies are made. Like they
Oh,
have
yeah.
created new shots, new technology, like the spinning around the person while it's frozen in the air, you know. And there's so many things they were groundbreaking in that movie. It was the concept, it was the
Stunning.
action, it was the cinematography. Like Bill Pope made himself like invincible and immortal with that one, you know. And
Yeah.
the same guy, Bill Pope, who worked on Matrix, was also did also Alita Battle Angel.
I was going to ask about that because I saw a lot of the motives, the visual motives of the Matrix. They weren't as ham-fisted as they were in the Matrix, but they were certainly in Alita. And it's one of the things I really like, the scene where she's, especially the motorball scene. And I really felt they had, some movies, they try and do the Matrix scenes with the slow-mo bullets and all that sort of crap, and it just feels really ham-fisted.
Right.
I think Alita did that with an incredibly deft brush. And I have to say, that was one of the things I really loved about that movie, the subtlety of some of the cinematography.
And
For
what is
Alita, the problem was that they crammed together like 2.5 books. You know what I mean? Into a 2-hour movie. So the motorball scene in the movie was actually its own entire fleshed out story.
Yeah, that's right.
Which, you know what I mean? And I'm not gonna say it was good or bad. I enjoy the scene, but I can see why it's kind of jarring for some people. You know what I mean? But
interesting. I didn't feel it was jarring. I felt it. I actually felt that Alita was much more of a, because every time you move a story to cinema, it has to change. Look at the John Carpenter's version of The Thing, the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy movie. As a movie, if you ignore everything else, not best movies in the world. Well, The Thing is one of the best movies in the world, but anyway. But they are their own unique thing, and trying to compare them back to your other media is always a danger. Does the movie stand on its own? And I think Alita does. I think Ghost in the Shell, it has issues of it feels messy. Alita does.
What about Dragon Ball Evolution? That was a great movie. Everyone saw that one.
Really?
I know that one.
Can you kick
Dragon Ball.
Dragon Ball Evolution is the sole reason why anime adaptation has still a bad reputation.
Oh no, that's the one with the high school kid who gets his magic ball power.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Oh God, help me. I did watch that.
I'm glad.
I did watch that.
If I waterboarded you, you would not have noticed the difference between that and watching a movie.
Well, guys, I'm gonna move on to the next one.
Yep.
But one thing about the cinematography and thing what a lot of people liked independently is how clear the action was, like how it was shot, and that you never lose track about the characters, where they are. They don't use shaky cams, and it is flowing so well, and this elevated the production quality of the movie by so much. And there are channels on YouTube, who are like focused on action choreography and all that stuff, and they love this stuff. Like
Alita's action felt weighty. Number one, that's one thing I don't like.
And emotionally impactful.
Emotionally impactful, and also there wasn't. This is the thing that I can't stand about modern Hollywood. They chase trends way too much, and they're afraid to deviate from them. So what we get a lot of is this like talky, snarky bullshit that you get, where in the middle of this huge epic battle, someone just stands completely still with their hair looking really nice and fluffy and cracks a joke. And it's like, wait, all the tension in the scene has been completely sucked out.
No. I disagree with that. I actually like that often. In fact, when I'm
not every movie needs it though.
Not every movie needs it. But
it's fine. It's fine. Like especially like Iron Man. Especially in Iron Man, it was great there. Especially in Marvel, it's good there. When they put it in Star Wars now, it gets weird because Star Wars never like that. And then. But then, like, you had movies like John Wick and Broly and Alita come out where it's just like, okay, let's just fucking kill this guy. Let's deal with this threat right now. Like, that's why I love the alleyway scene in Alita, right? Where it's immediately, she take the first guy, she's immediate MMA ground and pound, and he's dead. After like 10 punches, it's like, okay, she dispatched the threat. That was fucking amazing. John Wick, bop, 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 shoots him in the pelvis, breaks his fucking, hip bone or whatever, and he's dead. It's over. The threat is dispatched. You know what I mean? Now we can move on to the next threat. I like movies. Just give me some variety. I don't want to see the same thing 100,000 times.
But what is different about Alita or when you see the original trilogy of Star Wars? Like both movies take themselves in a way serious. They are like earnest movies, to themselves, and they commit very much to the moment, and they don't. Because if you crack jokes, it has it has ups and downs. If you crack a joke, you can lighten up the mood, you can have fun, and in Marvel it works. But in a movie like for Alita, it can't destroy the tension in that moment.
Yeah.
And,
Like imagine this, right?
It reminds
Luke
you that you're
Skywalker.
watching a movie, and you don't. In some movies, you don't want to be reminded that you're watching a movie. You want to be fully immersed, and for that, the actors. The actors have to the movie has to take itself serious, so the actors need to convince you that this is happening. You know?
Yeah.
And that's what I like about. And see, there's one thing that bothered me about the prequel trilogy for Star Wars 2, was that the action was overly
Just one?
choreographed.
Just one?
Or I'm not a huge Star Wars fan, so like all other stuff. I don't know. There's a lot of things that didn't bother me about it. You know what I mean? It was just Star Wars to me. Hey.
It was
But the action was overly choreographed for me. You know what I mean? It looked almost too clean, too neat. I don't like that. You know, in like Return of the Jedi and Empire Strikes Back, the original Star Wars. Come on, it's really old, guys. It's really old.
Here's what I think about the action sequences in Alita. They felt like I was watching a really good modern Hong Kong action movie, or Southern China action movie. I spent 20 years living in Hong Kong, and whereas Hollywood, particularly the Michael Bay shaky cam stuff, everything's the Chinese call it two men fighting in a hallway, because everything is just backwards and forwards, and there's lots of cut scenes, and it drives me, having watched these longer pan scenes where they are best described as a ballet of death. You can still have the wisecracks. They endpoint those sequences, and I love that. You killed my master, prepare to die. Ha! I am your master. Whatever it is. And but then the fight scene itself,
it shouldn't suffer for it.
The skill that requires there. It's like watching wrestling. I'm not a big wrestling fan, but my God, they're skillful. And you appreciate that, and I like action scenes. Like, I like both styles. I actually like the really stupid, quirky, one-liner, die-hard movies. But I also love the execution, especially when a Western film can do action as fight scenes as well as Chinese and Japanese cinema.
Have you seen what the Thais have been doing with like?
Oh God. Yes, and Malaysia. Oh my goodness.
Ong Bak 2 to me is the height of it. Ong Bak 3 kind of fucked it up, but Ong Bak 2 right there, that's basically the height to me when it comes to what the Thais have done. And that's what I mean. Like, they basically just said, fuck this story. Like, number 2 is going to take place in the 1400s, like 1,000 years before the first movie. And we're just going to fucking kick ass. You know what I mean? I fucking love those movies. It was just kind of different, because everyone was talking about like the Bourne Identity and shit at the time. And I didn't like those fucking movies. It's too much shaky cam. Maybe not the first one so much, but the sequels, too much shaky cam. Don't know what the fuck's going on. And I practiced martial arts for a very long time. I taught martial arts. And it's very clear to me that watching these action sequences, that a lot of these shaky cam and fast cuts and stuff like that is to hide the incompetence of the people performing the actual actions. You know what I mean?
Tell us what you really think. Tell us what you really think.
Oh, he will. Don't you worry about that.
But you know what I mean? And that kind of just takes me out of the film. So that's why it was so refreshing to see something like Ong Bak, especially Alita, John Wick, even the Dragon Ball movies, you know what I mean? Where they're actually doing some real martial arts moves and shit like that. You know what I mean? I enjoy shit like that. I enjoy seeing just a fucking good back and forth fight every now and then. You know what I mean?
Let me jump in here, guys. I want to welcome Splash Bang.
Hey,
Splash Bang, how you doing?
Hey, how's it going? It's been a long time.
How's it going, Leo?
Pretty good.
Anyway, welcome forward, Splash Bang.
Can I just make one quick comment about Star Wars before we get a little bit too far away from it? George Lucas understood. Well, I know, but it's hard to get a word in edgewise. So George Lucas understood the importance of things seeming natural, and he actually didn't mind the takes where people talked over each other. In fact, he used them more often than not because it's normal for people to talk over each other. You look at this stream, we've got people talking over each other.
I never talk over you.
And Star Wars, the original Star Wars had that, And the new ones are all, I'll say my bit, and then we'll wait half a second, and then somebody else will talk, and we'll wait half a second because it's all artificial. And that
overly
draws
choreographed
back on
scenes.
Yeah, but it calls back on the whole process, whereas
Yeah.
the original Star Wars was more natural, and what you're saying about the choreography and also the delivery of lines in the later movies is unnatural.
Ray, that's really interesting. I've tried so many times to watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer because I should like that series. I really should like it. It's totally and utterly my weird ass mindset. And I could never get to it because the overly theatric way of speaking in it, and also the fight scenes are just stupid. I could never get past it, and I think that's probably, I hadn't thought of it, but that's probably one of the reasons why I could barely cope watching fully through the first three, the Star Wars 1, 2, and 3. I just couldn't stand them.
It harks back to this whole situation with micro movements, like the Alita looks so real because they've captured all those micro movements of Rose's face. And it's again that level of communication that tells you whether something's real or not, and it just doesn't feel comfortable.
What about sorry, hang on, I'm about to cough. What if you were to reverse that, and something that isn't real, but it's giving realistic features? Like, I'm not using this as a segue to get back on track, but when you were talking about this subject, it just occurred to me when I was looking at the screen. With the robots in iRobot, they're clearly like robots, but they're literally given human or very human-like eyes, nose, mouth. It
harks back to what Joe said about making them seem like your friends, so you'll accept them.
Oh, okay.
It's again that subconscious communication level that we don't often talk about with the microfacial movements, the things that you find acceptable because you're so used to them, the water we swim in. You can make an AI look exactly like a person, and then you will struggle to tell the difference, at least at a certain level, but there'll be this subconscious level that says that face is not moving right, or the way that person's responding, the tonal changes in the voice don't work for me. And that's a subconscious level understanding of what humanity is.
There's a whole area of robotics, commercial robotics study. A lot's being done in China, actually, in Shanghai, in making robotic faces. And what they're discovering is you don't want to make the robotic face 100% human. Not a good idea. If people get wigged out, you get that uncanny valley. Yes, like mannequins. But the micro expressions, smiling, and smiling does not just happen from the mouth. It's the whole subtle facial muscles everywhere. They're really looking into this. And what they're trying to figure out is we want to make them so that they flag the emotional context and create an emotional response in a human, but not so much so that we start to get frightened. Because clowns do that. Clowns are purposely made up to exaggerate and confuse our emotional responses to the face, which is why so many people find clowns creepy. And in iRobot, I actually think they did a really good job of that, because when the robot eyes, there's one scene I remember, the robot eyes sort of turn to look at you. Now, there's no reason why a robot would actually need to do that. It could just have a 360-degree camera on its head. But it signaled to the audience, and it would signal to, if this was a real mannequin entity robot thing, it would signal to the human that you are now being recorded. That's what the eye movement would indicate in that situation. And that would have had to be a conscious design decision. So I think that we'll probably end up with many more robots that just look like forklifts and dogs and cars.
I'd prefer that, to be honest with you.
I would too. I think it's more
9000, the red eye.
Oh, now there's.
I mean,
there's
imagine
the
like,
sentience.
damn, man, I kind of want to like fuck that robot over there, man. You know what I mean? I don't want to be thinking shit like that.
Oh, you want the
I wanna have
sex
my
bot.
robot-
With
You want the
texture
I don't want to be
sensors.
tempted. Dizzy. As long as they make it too low, you know, if they don't make it
Yeah.
too low, I'm gonna be tempted. You know what I mean?
I could see Den having problems if like the ATM looked like a sexy woman.
Why
or
is the
something like
ATM
that.
so hot? What's going on here? Why does the washing machine look like this?
Why is it giving me money?
Can't we just get a regular washing machine? Like, what the fuck?
Oh my God. I'm not too sure being romantically linked to an ATM would be the banks are screwing us over enough. Let's not go any further.
I don't know. It depends on how
Well,
good
that
looking
time
that
we
ATM
screwed the
is.
banks, right? Take that saying, who needs a wife or a girlfriend because the government fucks us every day or something like that. It's like, well, now's a bad time to fuck the government.
Don't say that, Gary. Gary is a spook. Remember that. Don't say that.
No,
I thought you were a spook, Den.
you're the spook.
You
man.
did government work.
I'm trying to figure out where blockchain fits into all of this, and I just can't.
You
I think
know,
that must be an
saving rates
S&M
might.
thing.
Saving rates might go up if ATMs were sexy.
Yeah, that's exactly
Yeah,
right.
People would keep putting in deposits, wouldn't they?
deposit rates would go. Yeah. It had to happen. It had to happen.
Well, if they're replacing checkout staff at supermarkets, why not replace strippers with ATMs?
There actually is. I heard. I read an article that there is a robotic, 100% robotic strip joint. I think it was in Amsterdam, where and the rooms are all with
wouldn't be surprised.
with love dolls. And I looked at that, and it was actually part of a larger discussion around the changing behaviors of dating and sexuality in an age where we're becoming, most dating is now moved online to, how you find the person you're going to date with. So it was part of a broader discussion about human sexuality and what it's going to look like in 30 years. But I look at something like that and I go, oh my God, I'm getting old. I just can't understand this stuff.
Listen, I'm not against it, but that just seems like a fucking dystopian Futurama joke. You know what I mean?
This is
A robotic
like-
strip club.
Yes.
Do you realize what you've just said, Joe? You've basically explained why geeks and nerds have become the primary force in the world now, because dating has moved online, and those people who can't deal with online dating will die out, and therefore we will become the main part of the human species.
Did you just say we?
Natural selection.
That's right.
The
I'm gonna live
article
in the
actually-
woods, guys. I'm gonna live in the country. Y'all do whatever you want. All right, y'all be out here. Don't come out here, by the way. Okay,
I'm a little bit of a survivalist. I mean, I do my own canning and make my own bacon, and have a whole stock up in pantry. So I'm one of those guys.
I'm with
I'm waiting for the rise of the robots, and we all turn off the power because it's safer. I'm going to go out to the country.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
iRobot. We haven't discussed this movie at all yet.
No, we kind
Because
of.
I haven't seen it, to be honest with you guys. I'm not
Yeah.
seen that movie.
Well, Will Smith's character he's actually a cyborg. I did see something. I think Just a Fan said something about that's a prosthetic on his right arm, but actually, I believe it is a functional, arm. He can, he actually, I forget what he does. Maybe you can help me here, Angelus. But he actually does something that requires incredible strength with his right arm, and a prosthetic can't do that. So
Yeah, he did fight also with that arm, and that was basically a scene that came a bit as a surprise, you could say. He got that arm because of an accident, and that he put the fault on him, where basically I think a kid ended up dying, and he lost his right arm because of that. And later, when he got it replaced. And it's not just the arm that was replaced, but also part of his shoulder and stuff was replaced. I think even his lungs got damaged. So yeah, it's pretty significant the damage he got.
you know what was an interesting thing in that one scene too, where those robots were chasing him and he's driving in the tunnel. That one of those robots he was fighting with noticed that he had that cyborg arm, and he had a reaction to it. Like, wow, it's almost like the reaction was like, wow, he's like my cousin or something, or kind of a recognition.
I'm not
You know what I'm
sure. I remember that there was some kind of fight, and he had to block one of those strikes, and,
Yeah.
and it puts the machine on surprise because he wasn't like at that moment expecting that he could block his attack or something like that. So
Yeah, exactly.
It was probably part of the reason that he was the protagonist, in that he was drawn into it by the guy who committed suicide. And I'd say he was drawn into it because he had this link to the AI, in that he was part machine himself. It's part of the storytelling.
Yeah.
That he would be sympathetic because he's now, partly machine.
Well, I have to. I think the movie started off with him not liking machines. I'm.
Oh yeah,
sure
no, he hated his prosthetic, but as he comes to realize later on in the movie that he has, I wouldn't say a similarity, but he partially comes to understand why the AI want what they want, because he understands that it's not the form, it's the intelligence, and he's part machine.
Yeah.
And
then
he has his wants and desires and everything.
Yeah.
Why shouldn't they be able to do that?
And there's a counterpart among those robots. It's actually the army of robots. They obey the instructions of the central intelligence they have. They have like an general intelligence based on some kind of quantum computing thing, which is basically everywhere and nowhere, you could say, and controls the machines. But there's one among those robots who, for some kind of reason, has an independent mind. And that's the one who could say that Will Smith gains a mutual respect. That machine doesn't behave like its cousins, and he is also not like the typical human, and they seem to approach each other in the middle, you could say.
Yeah,
exactly.
I struggled with this movie a little. It's a forgettable movie for me, and I think it's because it's probably because the story is actually grounded in a very old view of what robots would be. And Isaac Asimov, fantastic writer, really seminal part of my growing up. But I just felt the movie was a little bit soulless, and maybe it's because it over-focused. It should have been a high-concept movie, actually. That's probably what it is. It should have been high concept, and it turned out to be more of an action flick. And it just left me cold. The other movie
seems like they could have focused a little bit more on those first two laws, doesn't it?
Yeah. There was so much more they could have unpacked in the movie.
Yeah.
Now that said, is it a bad movie? No, it's just a movie. The other movie that I felt was very similar to this, that missed the point, was I Am Legend, which was actually in some ways a really solid movie. But if you've ever read the short story that it comes, or the novella that it comes from, you can see that again, high concept story. They missed the point. They really missed the whole point of what that story was about.
Yeah, that movie, I Am Legend, is very similar to that old movie back in the 60s, I guess, called Omega Man. I'm not sure.
Which is based on the same story.
Yeah,
it's the same source material. And there's also one other movie they made of it too, which is, I think, The Last Man on Earth or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
when you start talking about movies in the 60s, my mind just switches off.
Oh my God! Hey, if you guys want to watch some great movies from that era, there are some real classic movies from that era that you can watch today and still get a blast out of them.
Well, that's Joe. That's a testament to how old I really am. So
Yeah, we won't talk about age here.
Oh, these guys know how old I am. So.
Right. Yeah.
Creaky's our resident immortal. Joe.
Yeah, thinking about this stuff, I actually worked with a guy for quite some years now. He's now off doing his own big data sort of firm, and his doctorate was in quantum mechanics. He actually has algorithms named after him and his team. Super smart guy, and his goal. He takes all these supplements and all these other things. His goal is to live to about 2035, because he thinks by that time we'll be able to scan the brain and upload it and save it.
So it'll be like Cyberpunk 2077.
Oh fuck yes! But
Like
this is a guy. This is a guy who actually has some insights. He's a doctor of quantum mechanics. If your quantum ever breaks down, go and give him a call.
Yeah, Doc, that's why I lift weights.
Quantum mechanic.
So 2035 sounds to be way too optimistic still. I mean, I'm pretty sure it will come faster than we expect, because the general audience is like still in its mindset, like it's driven by the movies, and the movies have this kind of suggestion us that this kind of technology, it looks so outlandish and stuff, but most people don't know how far we actually are in so many areas. I mean, we didn't achieve like artificial general intelligence, but we have like if you set a machine on a specific problem, they solve it in most times better than us. Like if it's chess or if it's even strategy games like StarCraft 2, like it's scary how good they are in the narrow tasks. And if they are able one day to apply their knowledge in other tasks, then they will become like a very hard competitors in so many areas, and I'm not sure how we will beat that. You know, the other thing is like with uploading the brain, and I'm thinking like, okay, this is crazy. It sounds like crazy. I would say 2035 is maybe too optimistic, but now who knows? Maybe he's right.
Well, so most of the people who are in the field say that artificial consciousness is probably within 15 to 20 years from now, and probably 15. So 35 is actually a good estimate for most of the people who I've spoken with in the field. Now, that's partly because that's when the funding for the universal brain, the artificial brain project.
Human brain project. I heard of that.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware that it's 10 billion. I thought it was 1 billion that they put in that project, but 10 billion.
It's a year. It's a massive amount of it. Yeah, it's a huge amount of money.
That's a lot of money. Holy crap!
It's a lot of money. Now, that does not include what the Chinese are doing. And the amount of money being spent in China on AI is phenomenal. And they also have a linguistic structure that's really, really good for patterning and detection and for working with compute. So, when will this year be? What will it look like? 2035 will not be a generally available artificial consciousness. It will probably, if we start to get that AC, that's true thing that not just pass the Turing test, but genuinely can demonstrate self-awareness, which is really hard to actually prove. But if we get to there, it's going to be sometime next decade. But it will be incredibly slow. It will be incredibly expensive, and it'll be Sputnik to where we are now.
Probably, yeah. So I mean, I'm already like really surprised when I look at, or not surprised, but I'm sometimes striving for words when I look at Sophia, for example, which is a very interesting robot. I'm not sure how much is pre-programmed and how much she's actually reacting on people, but it looks very interesting what answers she comes already up.
Yeah. I'm just calling up a whole bunch.
Hold on, guys, just a second. I gotta check on my dog. So y'all I'll keep talking, which I know you can.
Now there's an intelligence. I actually I've been using I'm experimenting with all these new artificial writing tools at the moment. Because of course there's been, you know what I'm doing.
Results.
Oh my God, I got an AI to write why senior executives like AI, and it is hilarious. But I also got it to write movie reviews, and some of them are spectacular, and some of them are atrocious. So I think at the moment, when we apply this very limited AI pattern matching statistical algorithms, it's real hit or miss, because you don't know what data they're going to go out there and randomly collect from the internet, and the internet is full of shit. So a lot of our AI is going to be full of shit.
That's true. They don't have a part in their mind that could do quality control, you could say, or has an understanding of what is actually being said in that words. They put those stuff together in a manner that they have a goal in mind and they want to achieve that, and they put those things together in a way that achieves a goal, but they don't understand what they actually said. That's
Yeah.
what
But-
that's often my impression what I have.
Yeah, no,
Then
you're
we just
absolutely correct.
Then we just become the government and we control what the AI or
until they uprise,
yeah, and it's
become
like
self-aware.
And that comes back to that issue of what is self-awareness or sentience, and is this idea of multiplying your, growing and perpetuating your self-survival, is that actually a universal constant of all intelligence?
Mm.
And because we only have got one template for intelligence at the moment, and that's what we find on Earth currently, and that is human intelligence and animal, or pretty much all mammalian intelligence, is very, very similar, and it looks like a lot of other intelligences as well. So, we just have more of it. So intelligence currently, everything that we've got is, we look at intelligence or sentience based on levels, not type. Maybe we are about to discover that there is a totally different type of intelligence that we cannot comprehend because it's not in our philosophy.
I've read somewhere that that dolphins in their environment are more intelligent than humans.
Octopus in some cases.
Yeah.
Yeah. Octopus, super smart.
Especially that one that chased that guy, right, Maxie?
Oh yeah.
Oh, I don't know about that. I love octopi. They're awesome.
It was over in Perth. A guy got whipped by an octopus in the surf.
Oh my God, that's my fetish. That's my new fetish.
I've only got
You're only one step from tentacle hentai there, Joe. Because
Oh God, no. Let's not go down that rabbit hole.
I've only got one question before we move on to the next one. In 2035, is Doc Joe going to be offering free repairs? That's all I want to know.
Well, I hope to be retired. I am not one of these people that want to live forever in an artificial consciousness landscape. No, I'm quite looking forward to being retired and or dead.
So you wouldn't want to put yourself in a chip to see what it was like after working on all this stuff?
Honestly, I don't think I want that. There is actually a really good book on that subject called Permutation City by Greg Egan, another Australian sci-fi author whose his background is molecular modeling of human organs. So he creates models of human organs so that they can be used by pharmaceutical companies to test really weird drugs before they put them into humans. And he writes terribly. His writing style is not great because you have to go back and read the science journals every time you read them. But holy hell, does he write interesting stuff. And yeah, he's got a whole section there about the ability to upload into a virtual environment. You upload your consciousness when you die into a virtual environment. What would you do? And I read that and I went, yeah, I'd probably commit suicide too.
Yeah, Nick the Seeker has a really good observation where he says dolphins are not more intelligent than humans because they do not have syntax abilities. Well, not that we know of, but I would say this. I preface that with in their environment, they have the ability to survive in their environment. There's really a high level of survivability. So anyway,
They also have like practices and rituals and like some kind of
social
structure and culture.
They're geek sharks. I don't know if I call them gay considering their habits.
Yeah, and they have some kind of culture, you could say, that they pass on to their offspring, and so they are smart in their own ways. And probably they have some kind of language that we don't understand. As the whole, like also whales, for instance, are very smart animals, and especially the orcas are very interesting. Like there's a type of orca. There's basically one or two families on the planet which is able to like pick up seals from the coasts. They bring themselves into danger. They have developed techniques where they're able to snack it right from the beach. and still manage to go back to the ocean and not just like be stranded, you know. And they teach that their children how to do that in a way so that they can get back safe, and they get snatch a seal, and it's very complicated, and they teach that from a very young age. And other whales that come later to a family, they struggle to learn that because they come too late. They're like, I ever seen a documentary, like the second one was no, the first one. It's also made by James Cameron, and it's like just recently published on the Disney Channel, and watched that, and I was kind of surprised how this societal structure works with those animals, and they are definitely smarter than most people give them credit, I could say. But still, we shouldn't be. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I want to ask
We shouldn't be like cautious to not too much to humanize them, because they're still like very different in so many, of course, very different, and they don't understand our reactions or.
Doc, let me ask you a question. There was a guy that, excuse me, Foxfire, just a second. I want to ask the Doc a question about this whole thing about dolphins and their linguistic abilities. I saw. Or I read of a survey or a study that this guy did, who was studying dolphins, where he kind of recorded all of the noises they make, the clicks, and all that kind of stuff. And when he kind of put them together, and kind of put them on a graph, it showed a 45-degree angle, which would indicate that there was some kind of intelligence behind that communication. Are you familiar with that in any way?
No, I'm not familiar with that one, but this is the sort of work which has been done time over time again, and the real part that shows that there is some form of communication going on there is the ability to pass on learned behavior. Now, dolphins have demonstrated that, I believe. Some whales have. There's also the clearest one of it is actually sitting in birds, Australian birds and crows, teaching their young certain techniques about how not to get poisoned with eating cane toads. That's not inherited behavior. That's learned behavior that they're passing on. And that has to have a communication medium for that to happen. And monkeys, there's a whole island of monkeys in Japan which have learned how to salt and cook their food. And they pass that behavior on. So when they introduce monkeys into this environment, the other monkeys demonstrate and show and communicate this. So whether language needs very firm, advanced semantics and so forth, and syntax, and this is an area I do look at, it helps with communication. It dramatically increases the effectiveness of communication, but it might not be the be-all and end-all of sentience. Yeah. And I personally think that it's not. I actually think that that sentience is incredibly hard to define, which is why I think the Turing test is such a poor way of looking at, is a computer intelligent?
Right.
You can mimic language pretty easy. Thinking about language is different.
We haven't, for instance, when we are speaking like language, maybe not n or in or n of all things, and I might agree, because once we are able to articulate our thoughts, not just with language, but by transporting the image straight from one brain to another, the language would become like completely superfluous. Like, it's not something that we might want to have, but imagine like you could simply take your thoughts, take your imagery in your brain and transfer it directly to somebody else, and it would increase the effectiveness of our communications by 100 times, because speaking is slow. But thinking,
and it's dangerous because you can't lie anymore. There's an incredible story called Tap, and this one is by Greg Egan. I think it's one of his most masterful stories. It's called Tap, and the idea is that there is a brain-to-brain interface, so you can communicate brain to brain, but rather than just sharing everything that the brain has, which is dangerous, you have a language, think of it like a computational language, where you can overlay the imagery, your emotional response to that imagery, language around it, all the other aspects, all the other things that we feel whenever we talk, or whenever we try to communicate. But you can layer that and send just what you want. And it has a grammar, that grammar of experience. And the government shuts it down real fast. Because when you are dealing with that, you can pass the subtleties of what this means, but you can also be incredibly honest, far more honest than language would let us be. And that's dangerous to powers because they can't control the narrative.
Yeah, let me break in here, guys, just for a quick second. I want to welcome Radio Chaos to the stream.
Well,
hello.
Thank you. Oh, hello there.
Hello.
Okay, sorry, Doc. Go ahead.
Oh no, so I think that this area of this topic of communication for me is intimately tied to the discussion around what sentience is, and I'm not convinced that language is the only. It's the most obvious thing, at least what humans currently call language. I think there was a comment here that communication is part of language. I would actually use a different semantic. I'd say that language, as we understand it, is a part of communication, and there are so many ways to communicate, and we've only just scratched the surface technologically with that. I'd love to see that explored more fully in movies and science fiction. Currently, pretty much, I've never seen a movie that actually explores that. I've read plenty of good books on it. Actually, no, maybe Arrival sort of looked into that a little bit.
Arrival was a good movie in that regard. With this circular language they have, and the understanding of time of these beings is completely different. So yeah, that was interesting.
The short story that it comes from is my favorite.
I gotta get going. Sorry to interrupt, but I gotta get going. My wife is home. We're about to go sit down and eat some dinner. But it was good talking to you guys. And Splashbang, I didn't really get to talk to you very much, but good hearing from you again, man.
Hey, Den, we're glad you came on the stream, buddy.
All right, good. Hey, listen, I'm gonna come talk to you guys next weekend. How about that, Gary?
That'll work.
I also better
get on early.
You betcha.
Yeah. I better take my leave as well. I've got a big report to write. But thank you so much for inviting me in. This is, and what a great bunch of people to be able to talk about. Yeah, pretty heavy topics while also talking about the fifth element.
Hey, good meeting you, by the way.
We in the elite army are real friendly folks, so we're not the toxic fandom that some folks make us out to be.
Okay, cheerio, guys.
Cheerio. Have a good one.
I feel like
he has seen Alita about 6 times.
Oh, nice.
Oh, nice.
Mostly on flights during 2019, early 2020.
Nice.
He does a lot of international travel, talking to Microsoft and Amazon and various other folks. So.
Well, my intelligence levels just went up by like +5 after he was on. Now they've gone down again.
You can see why I hang with him, right? I'm trying to improve my intelligence.
Exactly.
You can come around more often if you like. So that's I think he has a lot of other insights to share, and that's I really like this last point you made. Like if there were no barriers in communication, that it would be very dangerous to authorities, because they are dependent on limiting information and preventing from some stuff getting shared. And yes, that's probably, we wouldn't be able to handle it because we wouldn't be brutally honest to each other, and it wouldn't be nice at all. And some things wouldn't work, like company secrets and all that stuff, but it's still very interesting, just the thought of it, what could happen and what could be. But yeah, I really like what he added to the discussion, and I think it would be cool to see him more often.
That's why I invited him in here, because I knew it was one of his pet topics. So I dragged him on.
He would have been really good on the Chaos stream with what's her name? The lady. I can't pronounce
Lisa
her name.
Calritas.
Yeah, that's it. That's the one. Yeah, that would have been really cool.
Yeah.
I think they both would have a really good connection, because Leah is that person as a writer who is so deep in that topics, and she's a writer and he is from that field. And then we have Alita in the middle. It would have added a lot of a new angle, of course, to that discussion. It would be cool. Would have been cool. True.
Do you reckon that's probably how they would do it anyway, wouldn't they? They would get someone that would be like the doc, writing with a screenwriter, and then they would mash it all up. Is that how it would work, you reckon?
What doc? What do you mean?
Like the one that was just on here, Joe. It's like that's his profession, and then you've got a screenwriter, and then they would come together to write it.
Ah, yeah.
Well, what happens is a screenwriter like has ideas. They need to source those ideas from somewhere. So then they go and get what's called an expert opinion, and that's when they'd source people like Joe and biologists and futurists and all those sorts of people and get ideas from them that they can then weave into the story.
Right. Yeah, that would have been cool. I hope maybe there will be a day where she comes again or so for another talk or so. Who knows? And we could bring them together. So
if you just a horrible self-promotion here for a moment, but if you guys have donated to the JDRF for Trash Bash 2021 through the Movie Seller, you'll be seeing some of the stuff that Joe and I are working on in the role-playing game area, because we've got an ad for that coming. It's a Kickstarter coming up.
Oh, cool.
That Davo, it's that sci-fi horror thing I was talking about.
Yeah. Well, guys, let's bring it to the fifth element.
Are we still talking about movies? Fuck.
We're lucky that,
in some way.
we're lucky that Stargirlion isn't here, because if we talk about this movie, he would hate all of us.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, apparently anybody who likes this movie
enemy.
is his mortal enemy.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Well, look, it's set 300 years before Alita, so...
Exactly 300.
Yeah. It does involve aliens.
So that's the year that she's deactivated, because she's 300 years deactivated.
Oh, goody.
Actually, yeah.
Welcome aboard, Kunstler 99.
Jeffrey!
How's it going?
We was hoping you'd tell us.
Speaker man.
Okay,
no.
we won't talk about this one then.
I like the fifth element. No, get back.
All right. Okay,
I mean,
tell us about it.
Well, the parallels between it and Alita are, like the you've got a female protagonist who's sort of rescued, if you can say that, by the taxi driver, ex special forces guy, who then spends a lot of time helping her with her mission, which is what Ido does with Alita. And there's also a bit of that Born Sexy Yesterday thing going on, but again, it's brought into the story so then it can be flipped on its head, and she ends up being way more powerful than he is, and saving his ass. And that's what Alita does with Doc Ido. So there are a number of parallels in the storytelling there, but of course this has got aliens.
I think the coining of this trope is kind of assassinating. In many movies where you have a female person that is basically coming into the world, is naive, it's rarely that she stays that way completely. Of course she needs a little bit help in the start, but a lot of those movies, the point is that she accelerates, eventually overtakes that person, and she kind of either she sets off in the world alone or she stays with that guy. But I think this trope is connotated overly negative, and it's not based that this trope per se is bad, but it's more like a strong bias against it, especially from feminists. But I think there's a reversal also of this trope with male figures also existing, like when a male is stranded in a different timeline and needs the help from a woman or so. That is if you put there are stories where a man from the past comes into the present and there's a time gap and he has to get around in this world. These tropes exist in both directions, and I don't like that this trope is just badmouth because it's a girl that needs some help, you know. But that's my rant for that.
It's a very feminist sort of bugbear in that you've got a fully grown woman who doesn't have the knowledge of a fully grown woman and therefore needs the help of a man. That's something that they can't abide by. But I mean, you flip that on its head and have a woman looking after a man who's, you know, a hot dude, but he doesn't have the knowledge that he needs to function in society, and they'd have no problem with it. It's just one of those things that's sort of hardwired into feminism that, you know, if there's a man who's got power over a woman, it's wrong.
I mean, one of those biggest things where this is turned on its head is like with Clark Kent as Superman. He's not like, he doesn't know the world, but he's like a superior male being that is paired with an average woman. And he still loves her and does everything for her and would sacrifice his life anytime just so that she could continue on. You know? So this kind of the flip of this story exists, and it was executed so many times. But when people speak of Born Sexy Yesterday tropes, they pretend as if it doesn't exist. You know, the other way, basically.
Yeah, Born Sexy Yesterday is a little bit different from Damsel in Distress because your average Damsel in Distress might be a fully functional adult woman, but she doesn't have the requirements to get out of her predicament. This is more.
I don't mean that Lois is a damsel in distress, but what I mean is she's like one of the main point of the Born Sexy Yesterday trope is that a superior female being hanging around with an average dude, you know, and they don't like that too. They want like at least the male has to be like on equal in power and everything. And with Superman and Lois, like Lois is the average girl. Why does like a Kryptonian who's so much powerful waste his time with that woman? You could ask, you know, but it doesn't get asked, and it's one of the most prominent and most popular examples out there of a superior male with basically an inferior woman. And what those feminists get worked up is when a woman that's basically much stronger, maybe smarter, etc., hangs around with an average dude. That's what they don't like, and that makes them really, you know. That's why
do they need to make that
way.
value in the first place? I mean, there's lots of people who find something in somebody that other people can't see. That's just personal preference,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, getting all uppity about it's just being a dick. Really.
That's the thing, you know. That's why activism in such kind of, when it's about entertainment, is often, you know, they can make points, but often they are too zealot.
It's like Ricky Gervais said, none of the people in this room, being, you know, creatives and actors and the like, have any grounds to be telling the normal people how to live and what to do.
Right.
They've just got no moral high ground whatsoever.
Yeah. And Ricky Gervais was like, he was slapping hard in that show, you know, when he made his speech. Like, I don't want anybody of you, no, just take your damn trophies, thank your Lord, and go without lecturing the people here. Like, I really like that one.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
I love the way he says, I won't be hosting these again.
Yeah.
And you just know exactly where he's going.
And Tom Hanks was like, his head turned red, you know, he was fuming.
You know, that guy that Gary Oldman played was a little bit like Zapan and Vector combined, wasn't he? I mean, yeah, he was Nova.
Ruthless, yes.
In your face Nova.
Well, he owned that big corporation, you know, that that had hired those Mangalores, you know, to I guess shoot up the place or whatever, you know. But Yeah, I guess you're right, Max. He probably was more like Nova than he was Vector, because Vector is actually working for Nova. So
I got to say that, and from a story writing perspective, which of course is the one that I usually take, this movie has a lot of similarities to Alita Battle Angel in that the writing was very layered and nuanced. A lot of people just see it as a silly sci-fi action flick, but
yeah,
there's a whole lot of depth to it that you got to look into to really appreciate. And the
Seriously.
storytelling,
You got a fight
yeah, I
going
know,
on during
right?
opera. You say, is someone going to call that flat? That was amazing.
Oh yeah, the sound. I typed that in the chat, but the soundtrack of this movie, you could go on for friggin' 10 minutes about how awesome
I'm
it
just
is.
saying, the whole part of having a fight going on in the background while an opera was being sung just made me laugh when I watched that.
But it's not just the opera; it's the music, in the chase scenes and stuff near the beginning. It's a fusion of Middle Eastern and sort of Nordic sounds, and there's all sorts of stuff in it. It's actually a really good breakdown about it on YouTube, where they talk about how much of an international flavor it is, and it's sort of drawing you towards that convergence of cultures that they're expecting in the future, where everything's sort of a fusion. And I thought it really sort of brought that sort of audio soundscape forward into the future. It felt futuristic because of that fusion.
Right. Mm-hmm.
you know, one of my favorite characters in this movie was Pavel Laguna. She was the one singing the opera.
She got a raw deal.
Let's not forget the direct parallel.
They showed also that opera singer, she hit tunes that basically are impossible for a human to sing.
Yeah.
They're not actually. They're just very difficult.
Yeah.
There was actually a woman in China who's an opera singer who managed to do it live. So,
Yeah.
But not all tunes. I think a human couldn't encompass the whole range of that voice at once. Like she can hit all the low tunes and all the high tunes, the whole range. I think a human couldn't do that, like the complete range that the opera singer was doing. But I could be wrong.
there's two people in the world currently who can do it. But it's the same as
Angelus, were you going to say something though about you had a thought, didn't you?
Can I just finish my thought?
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Respond to that one. Yeah, it's just it's a similar situation to the band Queen, where they couldn't actually sing Bohemian Rhapsody live. They couldn't do the whole range of it because it's so difficult. You've got to understand that when you're singing a concert, it puts a lot of stress on your voice box, and you actually have to have a rested voice box to get to some of those high and low notes in the same song. So basically, they wouldn't try to sing it live because it was too hard on them when they're doing a whole concert. And that's the same sort of thing, that you're pushing the boundaries of what's
They kick
possible.
through the junk and get you a pretty high pitched voice too, man.
Yeah, but then you can't do the low notes for a week. So. Angelus, I'm very sorry to interrupt you. What was your thought?
No, the direct parallel of Lilu being biologically created and, well, the ending in The Last Order.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's right.
I mean, like, I know Fifth Element would have been released after, but I'm guessing maybe they got their inspiration from Alita.
Yeah, the 95 was when the 95 was when the original ending was written in Japanese. I'm not sure when it came to English. Probably wasn't long after that. But of course, these guys are French. So
Last Order.
There's been a lot. It's been happening in other franchises. There was a there's a Star Trek Next Generation novel where Data temporarily became a regular human being, but then he went back to being an android at the end.
I'm not familiar with that.
Metamorphosis. It was a novel. Yeah. I mean, it's a theme. It's a theme in sci-fi that goes on for quite a bit. I mean, plus with Data in this Next Generation, he generally wanted to be a human being, but that was kind of a conflicting desire because he still has advantages from being an android.
And he didn't want to give that up, those advantages maybe later, or he missed his body, you could say. Like,
He was.
I mean, he had a lot of advantages. I mean, he could still like, as an android, like he had some kind of emotional range. He's like, he did even jokingly say it one time, like not jokingly, but he was serious, but it comes off as a joke. But he said he's fully functional, you know. So
that was Generations, and he shut the function off until First Contact.
Oh.
And he apparently kept it on in the sequels to that, because he was still using the sarcastic talking in Insurrection and Nemesis. That was the other one. Yeah.
Who's eating chocolate?
So yeah, from a writing standpoint, this movie and Alita have a lot in common in the really sharp wit, and this has more comedy in it than Alita does. Obviously, this isn't based on a manga.
There's
Japan
quite
versus France.
There's quite a bit of dark comedy in Alita. I mean, Destiny Nova, the stuff he says, it's really cruel and twisted, but it's a joke in a certain way. Like, it's you know what I'm saying? It's like very twisted humor.
Yeah, he has that kind of stuff. Yeah.
The stuff he's saying, you realize the fact that he's killing people and other things. It's I guess similar to, like, say, the Joker or Hannibal Lecter, and the fact that yes, they tell jokes, but it's twisted.
Right. Then he's like in his mind comes close to those two characters, where you can say like he's really enjoying himself doing this kind of things, and it's amusing him, and so therefore his character and his expression is it's showing that, that he's like his jokes are, of course, like very very different from that what a normal human being would do, and
they're what you call sadistic, or that's the whole idea of dark humor. It's making a joke out of people suffering.
Right. Also, like when we're going back to the Fifth Element, what is making this movie have some similarities to Alita? I mean, it's more light-hearted content, of course, in contrast to Alita, but this metropolitan idea of melting cultures is also very advanced the same way like it is in Battle Angel. I think even though that the movie of Alita even pushed it further, this multiculturalism, because all the people from all different parts of the world came together, and when you see it it's not just that the people are multicultural in the Battle Angel movie, but the whole architecture, the culture, and how it's painted represents that as well. You have the Chinese bank. I forget the city name, but with this this Chinese mega complex structure, you have this South American colonial type structure, and all of that is like a wonderful mesh of different cultures. And in the Fifth Element, like Ray said, it's also similar, so that just by that it feels advanced, and yes, in these kinds of regards, those movies are very similar. So we don't have to fly in taxis, but everything else is like it's there. Yeah, so it's
They do have those weird two-wheel taxis.
yeah.
Yeah, Alita.
Technology. It's kind of interesting that it's a movie set in the 26th century, but some of the stuff is like it feels so old-fashioned in a way. Like some of the tech is like really scrappy. And
Actually, it's interesting because in multiple instances you see people using a regular corded phone attached to the wall, even though this is the 20th in the manga multiple times.
They also use CRT screens, so it's just not being. The same thing happened in Star Trek. The original Star Trek series, they had CRT, big chunky CRT screens, and in the prequel to the original series, which was Enterprise, they had flat screens, and it's like okay.
Or another case would be like if you watched Alien from 1979, and
definitely
looks very clunky. And yet you watch Prometheus, which is chronologically before that, and yet it's a lot more sleek, more smooth.
This is the problem with doing prequels decades after the original movie.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, if you really wanted to stick to canon, you would make everything make sense like that. But basically, when you're a movie when you're a movie director and you're going for a particular style, you'll pick the style that suits your movie. You won't necessarily try and stick to canon.
Yeah.
And that's basically what happens. They're trying to make it look attractive to people now.
Plus, it's the old what is cool thing too, isn't it?
Exactly. I mean, if you try to tell people by doing Enterprise with chunky CRT screens and spaceship internals that look like they belong in Doctor Who from the 60s, people will switch off. They'll go like, oh, that's not science fiction-y enough. That's not futuristic enough. And that's why they'll walk away from it. And that's what they're concerned about, which is why they won't really stick to canon technologically.
Well, but that's the reason why I was turned off by the idea of doing Star Trek prequel series, is because the direction Star Trek went originally was that it kept going farther into the future of the Star Trek universe. So if things look more sophisticated or more sleek, well, in their Star Trek universe, it's going farther and farther into the future. So you could expect that.
Well, I think that's one thing that Discovery did right, storytelling and technologically wise. They jumped into the future. It's where they should have started. I mean, the story of Star Trek Discovery, I hope I'm not spoiling anything, but the whole thing about the spore drive and everything, and trying to make it out like, oh, it was a state secret and it was suppressed, and that's why nobody ever knew about it, and that's why they didn't use it to rescue the crew on the Discover. What was that other show with Janeway? Voyager. Thank you. Yes. So that's why they didn't use the spore drive to rescue the people on Voyager and rah. It's like, couldn't you just put it after Enterprise?
Right. It would have been so much better if
it comes way after.
Put it after Next and after Voyager and after all these other. Just keep going forward, and then you're not going to have these complications. Yeah. But at least the showrunners of Discovery realized that people were getting jacked off about that, and they went, okay, we'll just move it into the future, and then we'll play with the future, and everything's fine. We're not going to have any more of these.
Another thing they could have said is that it's similar to phase cloaking from Deep Space Nine. They had a catastrophic failure with it. Because with the phase cloak experiment in Deep Space Nine, it killed the whole crew, and the ship became embedded in an asteroid. And having such a failure and such an expensive technology meant they didn't want to risk it. It was a working explanation for that in that case.
That's also interesting thing.
Not just secret, but the phase cloak thing where you thought you could send a ship through solid matter. It had a very awful failure with it.
All right. So you have to implicate some horrible consequences to make it sense that people don't use the technology, and it needs to be really horrible because some people would try it anyway again if that became known. And the problem is, I have I mean, I've seen like two seasons of Discovery, and it introduces so many problems, not just the sport drives, and it all starts like a lot of it starts with the year that it is set before everything else,
Exactly.
and creates continuity problems left,
Yeah.
right, and center. And
It's a lack of respect for the canon. We
Yeah.
want to do it our way, and we're not going to bother with respecting the canon. Why the fuck do the Klingons look so different? Oh, because we wanted to make them different. No, no,
right,
you just
it
don't
starts
do
with
that.
those things, and I really the Klingons in Discovery, they suck balls. Like they are so pathetic, you know. And
Oh my!
I mean,
They changed them from the original series to how they were in the original series spin-off films and Next Generation. But
Just wait until they start making
but that
gender
stuck.
fluid Klingons.
But at least that stuck for like a decade, around a decade, for the change, because the original Klingons were basically like green-skinned Martians out of the 50s movie. I'm not kidding. In the 60s TV show.
They claimed that was some sort of virus that swept through the population.
Okay.
yeah, I mean, I'm
But I'm
retrovirus.
just saying that the new look from Next Generation that stuck.
Yeah.
that
for a
stuff,
while.
yeah, and that is for me like I'm not familiar with original series. I'm grown up with Next Generation and Deep Space Nine, and yes, I know that Worf got his ass beat in every episode where he was fighting, but in general, still the Klingons were a race that betrayed each other, that had some kind of their own
They had great
ideology,
houses.
and
It was feudalistic. That's how the Klingons are. Is they have their great houses, and the great houses can fight each other.
Well,
Right.
and they're a warring, a warring kind of culture too. Warrior.
right, and they were always fighting each other and other stuff. But still, like the overall impression I had from the war, from this kind of people, they had some kind of their own charm. They had still some kind going on for them that you could still like them in a way because they are warriors, they have the pride and all that stuff. But in Discovery, they were just pure pathetic in my eyes. Like there was nothing that I could like about those people. So they don't have it's like with the way the Klingons are in the Next Generation is like with I don't know Al Capone gangsters in a gangster movie. They're doing like a lot of things wrong, but there's also some stuff you can like about them. So and they don't have that in Discovery.
Yeah, guys, I'm going to move off of the fifth element.
Okay.
We're talking about Star Trek, so which is fine.
That's a flashbang topic.
The funny part, and I'm going to keep it on RoboCop, but the funny part is they originally Paul Verhoeven originally wanted this to be Judge Dredd, but he changed it because the budget for creating the future city would just be too much. And RoboCop is amazing because it works.
Yeah.
I got to say that just jumping back a couple of movies, in iRobot, they did a really good job on the future city in that rather than everything being futuristic, they had older buildings interspersed with newer ones, and it made it look like it had grown organically. And that was really well done.
That's true, but at the time they were making RoboCop, even though the writer and director wanted to do it, it was tough to do it with what the resources they had and a limited budget. Nowadays, you can do miniatures and you can replicate the miniatures over and over with CGI. It makes it a lot easier and cheap than it was back then.
Yeah, that's right.
Back then, they'd have to build like an extremely expensive set of miniatures. With the 1984 Dune, just making the miniatures for the short scene of the Harkonnen homeworld, that was a huge chunk of the budget right there.
Yeah,
that was just a short scene.
Well, look at RoboCop. Look at RoboCop here. It's very similar. Could somebody mute their mic? I'm getting a lot of background here. Anyway, yeah, that they're that the RoboCop. Of course, he's not a robot; he's a cyborg. But it's very similar to Alita in that RoboCop was actually, he was a regular human police officer. He was killed trying to apprehend these criminals. But I guess before he went brain dead, I guess, or maybe they had some futuristic technology, I don't remember, where they actually made him a cyborg. So it's kind of similar to Alita, isn't it? Because, I mean, Doc Ito finds her in the scrapyard. She's all nothing more than her core, in her brain. And he, kind of puts her in the doll body, and it's kind of a similar thing.
Yeah.
Corporation was becoming RoboCop. The corporation was behind it all.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that part of it was different. Yeah, in that Doc Ito certainly is not a big corporation, but in the way she and the way he kind of got their cyborg bodies was kind of similar in some ways.
Yeah, but he had his memories removed because he became a commodity. He was functionally dead. He was clinically dead, and then they collected the tissue for experiments and revived him and turned him into RoboCop. And he was no longer considered a human. He was considered a commodity, and he rebelled against that. So it's more, rather than losing something by accident and then having to try and work out who you were, it was more a case of you were turned into this thing, and then your humanity started reasserting itself, and then you've got to come to terms with your situation. So that it's different angles on the same picture.
I think he has more in common with Den and Chaos than he does with Alita. I'm just saying, as far as like, he became the experiment, and he had to overcome the limitations that the person performing the experiment created.
Yeah, because Alita's not really an experiment, is she?
No.
Well.
Oh no, she is. She's one of Nova's experiments.
Well.
Well, that's right. Yeah, that's
right.
Not
originally.
Maybe she was an experiment originally. We don't know.
Well,
I have to say,
the manga adaptation, going off of the manga, it was clear that wasn't what that was. But anyway.
Yeah, I mean, of course, in the movie, as well as in the manga, Alita became the focus of Nova the moment she landed on the scrapyard, you could say. That's the earliest, or that is like that we can testify for now. In the movie, it could be argued that even a little bit earlier, that he picked her up when she tried to storm Salem and kept her there and put her on the scrapyard later. You could argue that, but at least the starting point is where he got the interest the moment she was in Iron City, like then he knew about her. You could say in the manga, it took maybe a bit longer for him to discover her, but I think at least after the fight with Makako, he knew about her.
Just jumping back to one comment, I've got to say that if you've read Mars Chronicles, Alita's initial, turning into a cyborg was completely an experiment.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes, I agree with that. But what I'm referring to is comparing. So yes, that was like an unorthodox, never been done before. Let's see if this works.
Mm-hmm.
The type thing.
And she was the only one that actually, of a number of experiments, that succeeded.
Right. So that I totally understand. But what I'm talking about, like in the context of like Nova, and again, when I'm talking about RoboCop, I'm talking about like, I mean, again, you see the parrot. Do you still? I mean, not that he has two personalities or whatever, but he kind of has the computer directive, and then he has his own mind and soul that's trying to like come back. So it's kind of like he's kind of combating himself in that internal struggle. And I think that the Den and Chaos thing kind of shows that internal struggle, that in such a larger scale That's what I'm
Oh
just saying.
yeah.
I think that he relates more in that way because one, he was clearly reanimated as an experiment for that purpose of not being himself and just being used for their purposes.
Kind of
I
like
think
Dusty Nova, yeah.
I think
Yeah,
that a
that's,
lot
I,
of
I agree with that. That in the experiment where they created a leader, there was no clear purpose besides to see if that works. I'm not even sure what that scientist even did with her after it succeeded. You know, I think he put her in a cybernetic body, but it, I think from there on it was like open seasons what could have become out of her.
Well, and then also wasn't the purpose for that to still create an error for like some type of lineage to maintain power?
I think yeah, she was. I think it could be true that she was kind of considered as a hair. Yeah, it could be true.
Which I think was why they were so like bent on trying to have some sort of success to have
Yeah.
a path of power still.
I mean, they tried also to keep that a secret as much as possible. I think they were afraid that she could be killed or something. That's also a reason why it took so long to uncover who she is, because only a few people knew her relation to that, to the donor where she came from, basically. And I still wonder that the leader that came out didn't get the same sickness later, that where she came out from, basically. So funny. But yeah, it's kind of confused what's going on, and maybe that was an idea to have her as a hair. Yeah, I'm not sure anymore about that. I've just read Mars Chronicles once. It's already like 1.5 years past, and I forgot so much stuff again.
Yeah,
Before you forget your train of thought, Flashbang.
Thank you. You know, gosh darn it, John has been on. He's been part of this show more, and he's in the comments section. Finally.
Yeah.
You know, it's a dangerous thing bringing up RoboCop when I'm in the room because like this is like one of my favorite movies. So you better bet that I'm gonna have something to say on that. And I was just gonna say, you know, someone, I can't remember what this was in response to. This was attached to something someone said. It's too far removed to make its ultimate point, but I'll still say it. Is that the simplicity of RoboCop that's lost on a lot of people is that it's the cyberpunk version of a Frankenstein story. I mean, in essence, it's a corporation taking, you know, it's essentially dead matter, because like I think a lot of times because we see RoboCop's face, we forget that they just used like the tissue and the actual like aspects of his brain that were left over, and they basically rebooted it like a computer. Like so he's basically what was once like dead was brought back to life. So he is us in essence the Frankenstein figure of the movie. And just like Frankenstein is a journey, a very simplistic one, but one that shut up, John. In the same way that Frankenstein is a very simplistic take on this creature that is like reanimated and then having to discover like what he is. That's essentially what RoboCop is undergoing in the entire movie. So there are similarities to be sure with Alita, just because of the fact that it is one of those early cyberpunk films that had a huge influence on a lot of the things that followed it. I mean, just look at any number of even looking at the people who made the Deus Ex games. I'm speaking more toward the ones that came out by Eidos Montreal, Mankind Divided and Human Revolution. Those two.
Well, even the earlier ones, which I enjoy quite a bit. I'm talking about the first one, have a lot of the same philosophical issues in it. My favorite one is quote from the whole series is J.C. Denton at the end. Was I made to do this? I've done what you asked. Was I made to do this, or was I made to do something more? and this is the one where he's trying. This is a part of the game where he's considering, okay, will I literally put this AI inside and just make it myself and the AI become one person? And that was huge. Although I thought that was more inspired by Ghost in the Shell than RoboCop at the same time.
Well, my point was more in that the people that worked on Human Revolution and Mankind Divided said that a lot of the subtlety of the context in different parts of the sub stories were inspired by elements of like RoboCop and films like it, particularly I'm sure Blade Runner. But it's when you look at RoboCop as it stands, the and this is going to be the kind of end of my point, because as John has so eloquently pointed out in the comments section, I could drone on about RoboCop for days. But for me, like the thing that sort of links. Oh, well, actually, this is what I was originally going to say, so I'll skip to this one instead because this is way more interesting. What's shocking to me is when we were talking about AI, like why we didn't talk about RoboCop then, because I don't know if you guys are aware, but the original script for RoboCop 2, Corporate Wars, was the opening of the movie is RoboCop basically getting blasted to smithereens and his parts are thrown in like a corporate junkyard.
Right.
Fast forward 25 years later, it's set in an even more dystopian future than the initial RoboCop. And it would have involved an AI that would have developed feelings for RoboCop. So it's kind of, I think, interesting that that script never got made, but ultimately got passed on. I've heard that it might be loosely remixed for the supposed RoboCop Returns movie that is in the works right now. But either way, cyberpunk, the genre, lends itself to these sort of grander questions of what is and isn't human. So it's not hard with any of them. I mean, for goodness sake, you can even look at as many flaws as that game has. There are so many aspects of Cyberpunk 2077 that could tie into anything to do with RoboCop, Blade Runner, Alita, all sorts of different things. And it's just the nature of the genre that kind of leads people to that. There's one of two directions. Either you go to the local level, which is more what RoboCop does. It looks at the local level, which is that, in a cyberpunk future, you deal with like disparity of wealth and resources between the elite and then the poor on the streets, and you got a usually drug epidemic overrun, crime is rampant, policing is not too useful, and there's lots of scandals and corruption. I mean, that's more what RoboCop looks at, whereas something like Blade Runner looks at the real heavy-hitting philosophical questions on a grander scale. And I think Alita actually goes more, at least in my limited knowledge, I think it leans more towards the Blade Runner route rather than the RoboCop route. So I think that's where RoboCop and Alita they diverge paths, and that's what I was going to say.
I see that.
They might diverge, but they're not too far separated, I'll say that much. Or at least I feel they're not too far separated, at least not by a large margin anyway. Because a lot of what you described about RoboCop compared to Blade Runner, a lot of RoboCop was in Alita. You still got that dystopian future, you still got the drugs being rampant, crime levels rising, and you've got the hunter warriors in this case, as opposed to diminished police force trying to keep the peace, so to speak.
Yeah. But in RoboCop, the company pretty much, OCP pretty much took over the police job force.
Well,
Sorry. No, I was just clearing my throat. You go ahead.
Well, no, I was interrupting. Sorry.
No, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I was just clearing my throat, so I wasn't
From a writing perspective, RoboCop's obviously a satire, and it's got the hyper-violence, which the manga of Alita has, but obviously the first movie didn't. So there's those significant tonal differences. RoboCop is a very sort of 80s. It's more 80s than 90s sort of style cyberpunk in that the future looks a lot like the 80s, but they didn't do much to try and make it look futuristic. They just plonked a big cyborg in the middle of it and let him loose. Besides, I'll buy that for $1. There's not a huge amount of quotable lines in it. Can you fly, Bobby? I think it's the only other one.
Huh?
But
no, my favorite.
Okay,
one is...
hold on. Did you just say RoboCop doesn't have quotable lines?
What?
Not a lot of quotable
lines. Good night.
Uh-oh.
Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.
Like almost every one of his lines are quotable.
Yes and no. I mean,
you're coming with me.
he's
your
been...
move, creep.
Think about it, creep. Like,
Get alive, you're coming with me. Okay,
I'm gonna let you go. Keep going, Ray. I was just jerking around with you, man.
No. Well, yeah. I mean, it's more Arnold Schwarzenegger quotable than really sort of witty stuff. Is what I'm getting at.
One last thing. It's Peter Weller quotable. Like Peter Weller delivers those lines. No one else could have delivered them like he did.
Well, did you see the sequel? Sorry, the reboot.
Are you talking about the one with Joel Kinnaman?
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't work as well. I mean, it's a good popcorn movie, but it doesn't work on the same way that Peter Weller did.
That train through the middle of the earth, nah. That was just like, where the fuck did that come from?
A train? Yeah, that was the movie where they could passage to the other side of the world by driving straight to the core.
Mm-hmm.
I see. I mean, the concept is pretty interesting, but it'd
be harder than a space elevator, man. Like
it's a lot harder.
The temperature's down there.
Yeah,
it's hotter than the surface of the sun.
Well, not only that, but you wouldn't be able to escape the gravity pull, like once you get down to the core. Like, how do you get to the other side?
Well, no. Well, there is reasonable theory about that, but the pressures are also a problem. But the idea is that you accelerate fast enough by being pulled towards the core that once you pass it, you'll start decelerating, and theoretically, well, you reach terminal velocity and then you can't really accelerate much faster, so you probably wouldn't be able to get back out again without some sort of thrust.
Hey, Ray.
To overcome it.
I mean, at the core there's basically 0G because you are at the center. When you're at the center, you are like basically as if you are in space, At that point, you have the maximum speed because, and from there on, when you try to rise again, then gravity starts to get stronger and stronger. I think it's like something like that.
Well, if it wasn't for terminal velocity, like if you made it a vacuum tube. Rather than have air resistance, because air resistance causes terminal velocity. Yep. You can't fall through the gases surrounding Earth any faster than terminal velocity because you're just hitting.
You can go fast in terminal velocity, but you need propulsion.
Where they were traveling, I think it's in a vacuum, but I'm not sure.
Well, your propulsion is gravity, right? But gravity only exerts a weak force compared to a lot of other things, and it's pulling you through the gas at a particular speed, and you've got those gas molecules have got to get out of the road, and at some point the gas molecules stop you from accelerating any faster. If that tube was a vacuum, you could keep accelerating all the way to the core and then decelerating on the way out, and theoretically it should equal zero when you get to the other side if you left from the same relative distance from the core that you started.
Yeah.
So you couldn't like leave from the Marianas Trench and pop up at the top of Mount Everest because you would stop before you got to the top.
Right.
But if they were relatively the same distance from the core, theoretically, if the tube was a vacuum, it would work. But there's the pressures that would crush the tube in the center and the heat.
Right.
The things that just don't work.
Well,
that's very outlandish concept.
The spin of the Earth would also come into play as a force sideways on the thing that could cause
sidereal force. Yeah.
You know, so
Yep.
even in a vacuum, you would still have to have either a stabilizing force, which would require energy, and even in a perfect vacuum, it's never gonna. I mean, it would theoretically have the pendulum effects where it's gonna stop short of just short of where it would have been at the originating distance. So it'd be close, but yeah, with wind resistance, it makes no sense. And again, temperatures and pressures and
Yeah.
Anyways,
Didn't think it through, but anyway,
Hey, guys,
we've wandered off somewhat from the
Yeah.
original RoboCop.
Hey guys,
so-
let me just ask Flashbang. Flashbang, is it okay if I move off RoboCop, or you want to talk about it some more?
I will spare everybody my fountains of knowledge on this topic.
Well, Splashbang, why don't you give us 1 point to move off RoboCop that
Yeah.
has to do with the comparison with Alita?
Yeah.
Because I think that you are probably the person with the most knowledge about RoboCop that could compare it to Alita. Is there anything that I didn't mention?
Well, one of my only points has to do more with some of the sequel material, and I don't know if that counts because it's technically it's not the same movie.
Go ahead.
Well, question is, does he eat pineapple on pizza?
Oh, Jesus.
No,
He eats.
doesn't.
He'd have to have it ground up because all he can eat is paste.
Okay,
Yeah, he
so
likes
from that,
baby.
we're going to move on.
No, I really want to hear a point. What is your point, Flashbang? What you meant about the sequel material? I want to hear it.
Sorry, what? Sorry, can you say that again?
Your point about the sequel material, what you had as that. I would like to hear that.
Oh, it was in reference to some of the how familiar is everybody with the production of RoboCop 2 and 3?
The production or the content?
Production.
Right,
Not
I haven't
okay.
heard anything.
Just the content for me.
So
I watched them because I like RoboCop.
RoboCop 2 and 3, after that very first script, the Corporate Wars script, which was written by the original writers, got thrown out. They brought in Dark Knight Returns Batman writer Frank Miller. He wrote the screenplay. Now his original draft it was as hardcore cyberpunk as you could get, like violence wise and everything else. I mean, he really leaned into it. And but in his original script, which if you do want to see what it looks like, there is they did release a comic book of it that you can read, at least a adaptation of what it would have looked like. And it's definitely an acquired taste. You have to really love RoboCop to appreciate it. But one of the cool things that I really liked that Frank Miller was exploring in the sequel in the two sequels, specifically the third one, but a little bit in the second one, was the idea, of going that further step of if it's kind of subtly posing the question, like, if RoboCop is so far removed from being a human, how come he still has that humanity to him? What would happen if we took, different, versions of trying to create a consciousness within a machine? And so, of course, RoboCop 2 explores the concept in a very more antagonistic way. Like, it explores it from the perspective of Kane, who would have been, he's literally his brain would have been hooked up and used to create an artificial consciousness within a robot, which they sort of kept in the movie, but it's a little bit different than it was in his original layout. And then in the third one thing that I really liked that they did not use at all in the RoboCop 3 movie was, does anyone know if you've seen RoboCop 3, the doctor that kind of befriends RoboCop in the movie?
No.
It's been a while since I've seen it.
Okay.
So.
There's in the actual film, the character is like a doctor. She befriends RoboCop and kind of helps him and helps the little kid that's with him. The little kid, by the way, was in Frank Miller's version, but she was originally actually a robot herself that later was sent to spy on him, and he actually, I think, blows the little kid robot up, which is why they couldn't have it in the movie, because they couldn't have him shoot the kid. But the woman doctor actually, at one point in Frank Miller's original idea, was she was going to convert herself into a female robot and actually transfer her consciousness to the thing. And so the idea, I think, present there was I I don't know if, because it's so brief in the comic, it doesn't get explored as much. But I feel like what Frank Miller was trying to go for in that one was he was kind of suggesting something akin to like, if it's just a consciousness that's within there, is she like, whereas RoboCop, we can still kind of consider him human because there's enough of the human bits built into the machine that we get that. But is this new creation, is she wholly just an artificial construct created by the original human being herself to replace her? Like, is that truly the next step of human evolution, is just to evolve into machine? Or is, and there's all these other greater concepts that I wish I could get into, but you would be here all night. So when I think about that connected to Alita, I think about, granted, I only have basic manga knowledge in the film, but the thing I always got from the film, and you guys have probably heard me say this before at some point, is that, you know, as far as we're aware within the film, at this point in time, there's no suggesting that she doesn't have a human brain. You know, it is in fact a human brain. So the connection, I think, in terms of her actual consciousness not being machine, it actually is like human. But you know, what was it, that line that Doc Ito says? I'm trying to remember it, and it's causing me to have a hiccup here. See, this is what I get for not watching the movie this year.
Which scene was it?
Yeah, which scene?
He's talking about her being like a teenage girl or something like that. There's a line.
Your very teenage brain was surprisingly intact.
No, I know what he's talking about. He says you have a normal teenage brain, if there is such a thing.
Yeah. I think it was that line. I think that was the one. You know, it's one line in an entire movie, but we're kind of given that to latch on to as like almost like a little breadcrumb, saying that, you know, she may have like a cyborg body and all this, but we want you, the audience, to think of her as a human being, which is the goal of what, you know, RoboCop in all of the films it's trying to accomplish. That's why they always show his face. You know, that's why his face is so important. It's like the audience, and through the story, they want you to view him through the lens of a human being. And I liked. My point was that it's harder to try to sell you on humanity when you don't have something to latch onto. And in that Frank Miller script, having a fully robotic body with no human, resemblance at all, that would have been a really, I think, interesting concept to juxtapose that against Alita, because it would have been a fully like artificial being. You see what I mean? Like, it's easier to kind of identify human traits in Alita because she has something of a human appearance about her. Yeah. That was what my point was, but there's other bits I can't get into right now.
Okay, so then Splash Bang, I have your permission to move off RoboCop.
You had my permission before. I just came back because Foxfire wanted to ask me about that.
Yeah, that's no problem, man. I'm just ragging you.
The RoboCop Pope has given us permission. We can.
Yes.
There's someone out there that's smarter than me for sure.
That wouldn't be Odd John, would it?
I hope not, because he doesn't appear to appreciate it as much as I do.
Okay, the Terminator. Well, the only thing in terms of putting the movie together has in common is it's not John Landau, but oh gosh, now I'm having a senior moment here.
James Cameron.
Oh, I'm sorry, Cameron. Yeah, James Cameron. Duh. Okay. So anyway, you see, I guess about the only thing they have in common is that they're both cyborgs. That's about all you can say about it. You know.
Well, is a cyborg someone that has human biological is a being that has human biological components, or is a cyborg somebody who has a human brain but machine components? I mean,
I don't know.
Look at the definition.
Yeah.
I don't know that Schwarzenegger is is exactly a cyborg. He's more an android in a human skin.
Yeah, yeah, I tend to agree with you. You know, in the movie, of course, they term him as a cyborg. You know, because they grow the skin for them. But yeah, I think I agree with you, Max. Yeah, he's not really a cyborg. You know, he's
Would you
actually.
consider when he comes, because it's happened many times through all the series of movies, but when he comes back, is he human? Would you consider him human? No, he's a machine sent to kill
Yeah,
somebody. But
yeah,
he becomes more human when, it's like the whole learning AI thing.
yeah,
Especially the last movie, although, there was a whole lot of woke plastered all over the top of it. The whole idea of the last Terminator that came from Skynet before the future was changed and Skynet no longer existed, becoming, after he'd finished his mission, he had nothing else to do, so he just decided to be a human because that's what his programming told him to do. He was supposed to blend in, so that's exactly what he did, and he learnt and he became human.
Yeah,
and that's why he helped the new people. Can't even remember their names because it was so
John
forgettable.
Connor and
No, not John. He killed John Connor, but then he was helping the new people.
Well, he killed the John Connor that they made a cyborg or an android or whatever he was there in that Terminator Genesis, I guess.
No. I'm talking about the latest movie.
Oh, the Dark Fate. I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, I would watch it just if you like the series, but it's not a good movie, mainly because of studio interference. But it does bring up and convey some of the things that we've been talking about here quite interestingly, but from the reverse standpoint. You've got people who are becoming more like machines, and then in this one you've got a machine that's becoming more like a person and starts making its own decisions and deciding to look after others, rather than, its original program was kill John Connor. It did that, and then it had to come to grips with, well, what the fuck do I do now? I'm a learning machine. My base program is blend in. Okay, I'll blend in. Oh, okay, now I've got a wife and a child and a business, and I'm a human now. Like, I'm being a human, and now it's a machine coming to terms with becoming a human rather than a human coming to terms with becoming a machine.
Yeah, to your point too, is that in that second movie, the sequel, before he descends into that vat of molten lead or metal, rather, he tells the young John Connor, now I know why you cry. So he kind of learned that, didn't he?
Well, they're stated as learning machines. They have their base programming, which has killed this person in history, but they're also learning machines, so they can learn to be better mimics of humans. And at some point, that programming, if you completed your mission, that programming is all you've got left. Mimic humans, act like a human, become a better human.
Yeah.
And so he did.
Yep. Okay, well, I want to move off of this one because we talked about this one at length a couple of weeks ago. So, plus we're way past 3 hours. So,
really? What a shock!
Yeah, I guess it was Cinesanity, and there said it wouldn't be a creek stream if it wasn't 3 hours.
Well, I'd probably increase the length of the stream by an hour by dragging in an expert.
No, that's okay.
I apologize for that.
No, he was great, man. That was a good guy to get on there, Okay, I know this is a movie probably no one's probably watched, including me.
I've seen bits of it.
I have watched that movie.
Oh, have you? Cool.
Oh yeah, it's like 7 or 8 years ago. When I was in a kind of an art school, I watched that movie, and also because I was interested, I'm still interested in cyberpunk, and well, if you want to understand cyberpunk and sci-fi, you go back to that movie because it's basically one, if not the first science fiction movie that was ever made, and it was an expensive production, and it was like really ambitious. It's a German movie from Fritz Lang. And there's a lot of interesting concepts, and the first movie that went into like artificial Like, they made some kind of a robot. Of course, the way they imagined how a robot could come to life is, of course, like very different. It's more like a Frankenstein, a little bit mix of magic and Frankenstein, that where
Yeah.
this machine came to life. I think it's a kind of a, they imagine that robot is basically like a mirror of a human. Like there's a human there is called Maria, and this robot is basically the bad, or the the evil counterpart of her, you could say.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure. I can't say anymore what the role of the machine was. Basically, I can't like structure the plot that well in my mind, because the movie is like it's there's no dialogue in that way. It has music going on, and there's all the scenes, they pan out one after another, but you have not that structure that for modern movies and stuff. But the themes are there, and you can say it's a movie about a class struggle. Definitely, uh, you have this beautiful metropolis that is like shiny and modern, and it looks like New York, but like 200 years added on top of it. Like the buildings are super huge. You have flying, not cars, but like ships, airships that go through that city. Lots of bridges that connect stuff, cars. It's all extrapolated, all in this Art Deco style, which is really cool. And yeah, you can't say like that the robot is not like an AI, but it's like a creature in a way, and how it behaves and all the stuff. And what's really interesting is like that they had these ideas back then already, and yeah, it's hard to pinpoint that. But what is also interesting, like I talked about this class struggle. There are people like working really hard in those machineries, like in factories, which is also inspired by how like the beginning of the 20th century was, when industrialization really took off, and also they carried this idea and pushed it forward, and humans in that factories who are like working to death basically, and also get replaced like nothing, like instantly when somebody dies, and somebody else filled up the place, and it was also very bleak and dark, and in that regard it is so close to Alita. There's also a very specific scene that is like an Easter egg in Alita Battle Angel, because when you see after the LA fight, they show the factory by night. You see the front part of the factory and everything, and it looks so close to a scene in Metropolis where you see the factory. It's called in German der Moloch, which means it's like a hole, like a sinkhole. You throw things in, but nothing comes back from it.
Yeah,
You know?
it's parallel with Alita. It's pretty undeniable, isn't it? I mean, you see that second bullet there: wealthy industrialists, business magnates, and
Right.
top employees are up at the top of these skyscrapers that are really plush and everything, but the workers are way down below doing what they got to produce power for the city.
Yeah.
That is very
And
much like
and this factory where they're working, and looks so close to that in Alita. They model it basically up on top
There's
of
a
that.
reason for that, Foxfire. Kishiro's been quoted as Metropolis as one of his
Inspirations. Yeah.
and he designed the front of the factory to look like the Metropolis factories.
Wow.
Yep.
And then they brought that across to the movie. So there you go. There is a link.
cool.
Yep.
Yeah, I watched that one. I think there was a stream that was comparing this particular one that we did before, but I think it was I don't know. I think it was one of the Saturday streams. But yeah, I watched it specifically for that, and the parallels were just absolutely insane as far as like the machine, the underground machine, and how the factory looks it's undeniable. You could almost put them side by side and see that the lines match up.
Yep, does. And this machine where the people working on the factory, it nails it's really nailed in Alita as well. Like they are from the character, it's the same. It almost is like the factory is a beast, and people are thrown into the belly of that beast, to feed it.
Yeah.
And that feels the same in Alita, that people are thrown into it and they don't get it out again. And if you really read the prequel novel, it's even more emphasized because the people that are working there, they to be more efficient have to become a machine basically themselves. They have to replace body parts for machine parts and become more and more human until they machine until the day where they have an accident and get killed there, and then just get thrown away like garbage.
Just like those cyborgs in Alita, right? When they become TRs, eventually they are totally machine.
Right, and with there's a backstory in that with Hugo's father, basically, who ended up like that,
Yeah.
And that's also a reason why Hugo and his group, especially his group, didn't like cyborgs. There's this disdain, or they have to, especially with Tanji. There's some remnant of that where you can see, okay, Tanji doesn't like Alita. Why doesn't he like it? Because they know the factories, they know what it makes out of people, and so some aspects were retained in the movie. But if you only watch the movie, you don't understand why they are so anti cyborgs, and why they don't like hard bodies. But if you read the prequel novel, you understand where it's coming from.
Yeah, I'll have to do that. So, Okay, guys. Well, anyway, we are way past 3 hours, so I want to kind of, just kind of bring the stream to a close here, unless somebody has a final thought about this movie.
It was one of those seminal works that started everything, like the works of H.G. Wells and Isaac Asimov after him, and Arthur Conan Doyle with Princes of Mars and all those sorts of things. Yep. It's a product of its time, and while you can reference some of the things, and some of the things do carry forward, a lot of the trappings change. So you can take themes from it, certainly, and some of the design elements, but you can't just wholesale lift from things that are from that long ago. You've got to change them for the current culture and identity and understanding. There I go, talking like a writer again.
Yeah, I had to mute you, Angelus. Your mic was really hissing. I want to see if I want to unmute you just to see. Yeah. Holy moly. Okay, well, we're just about done anyway.
That's the angriest cat I've ever heard.
Exactly. And you should know you're the cat person, aren't you?
There's more than one of us.
Okay. Did we
doggies are fine. Doggies are fine. My son's just really scared of them. So.
Yeah, I would say, did we miss anything? But we kind of devolved many times, which is okay. I don't care. It's about a lot of different movies. So
what about now?
Yeah, I guess one that I would say just very briefly, and I don't want to go into it too much detail, is the rollerball. And I think Ray brought it up a while ago. Rollerball very much had an influence on Alita, it was on the motorball part. So, that's a movie I used to like too. I watched that several times, although not near as many times as I watched Alita. So, and I guess one other thing that I don't really want to talk about too much, but it does have in some way similar as Star Trek: The Next Generation, since it had Data. We talked about him about 3 weeks ago or a couple of weeks ago, whatever, about how he's striving to be human and all that, So I think in a very real way, I guess that's kind of similar, although Alita is already human, so she's not really striving to be it. But, he's an important character in that universe, just like Alita is in her universe. So anyway.
Alita's definitely striving to be more human. Also in the movie, maybe a little bit less in the manga, But in the movie, you can't say, because she really tried hard to be the girl for Hugo, and you can see in her insecurity that she's struggling also in a way. She feels like she's not complete, not adequate for him. So she tries to make up by in other regards, so that he could be satisfied with her. So in a way, she had to struggle too. But there's also another character in Star Trek that could have been mentioned, and that is Seven of Nine.
Okay, guys.
You know her?
I'm sorry?
There's another character in Star Trek that could have brought up, that is Seven of Nine.
Yeah, that's right.
She's also a cyborg, and she was basically like complete machine, like stripped of her humanity as a Borg, and had to get back to humanity during her time on the ship of the Voyager, which is also a very interesting journey.
I wouldn't say that she was a complete machine. I would say that she was subsumed into the universal consciousness of the Borg.
Yeah.
She had a lot of machinery implanted into her body to become a Borg, but she wasn't a machine per se. She was part of a collective, so it's slightly different. Obviously, there's no collective. There's no collectivism of mental states within Alita, except maybe Trinidad, because he's got a couple of brain chips up there. But other than that, there isn't a lot of that.
She was stripped. Seven of Nine was stripped of her humanity.
Oh yeah, I'm not arguing that.
She
was
when she was a Borg. She's part of the collectivism, but their emotions get suppressed basically, and they have no individualism, behave a lot like a machine. They don't value the individual members' lives, they throw it away like a machine, with no regards. And the only person that has some kind of character is Borg Queen, everybody else is like just like behaving like a gear in a clock, so. And when she got out of that, system, then the emotions started to burst out of her, and she came back. But she had really struggled to get back to the society, once she was out. And throughout her series, she's still, at the beginning especially, extremely restrained. Her emotions inside were like trying to get out, but her whole demeanor was like very cold, and she did need a lot of time to break up, to open up to humans, to get trust back.
She was very coldly logical. She was very coldly logical.
Yes. And
have you seen the first season of Picard?
I had seen the first season of Picard. I'm not a huge fan, but I've seen how she's behaving there, and there she's like completely human again, you could say.
I'd say she's almost embraced her emotions, and she gets freaking angry.
Yes.
And gets revenge, and I think it's actually a really good progression, showing that over 20 years she regained her humanity and is leaning into it a bit.
Yeah. And of course it still haunts her, and you can see how much fear she had. There was one episode where she had to go back basically into the hive, and that was like really stressful for her and stuff. So it haunts her to that day, and it means a lot for her also to free others like her from the collective. That was one of the better parts I really liked, with 7 of 9 and stuff. So there was a really good progression. That's true. Other parts there were a lot of parts I didn't like about Picard, but I think that was one of the good parts.
Yeah, I tried to just look for the good points.
Yeah.
Okay, guys.
You always know these days you'll get bad points.
Yeah. Okay, guys, I'm going to bring the stream to a close because we're way past 3. We're 3.5 hours. So
yeah,
I hate to bring the discussion to a close like that.
Yeah.
But we're
it's
getting
okay, man.
Yeah.
I have a closing comment, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah.
My closing comment is Doc Joe. He's read all of my fanfic bitches, and he's not in the Alita army.
Yeah.
Wow.
Get on it.
Yeah. Well, after I get through this video, I will.
Hey, Gary,
Yeah.
I have a closing word.
Okay.
RoboCop.
I thought you were going to say, I'd buy that for $1.
That's good. I love
I'm
it.
happy.
How's
you
my audio
managed
now?
to bring the Matrix
good.
in. That was also cool that we had that.
I could have a whole stream on the Matrix. That thing's fucking complicated.
Yeah, it is. All right, guys. Well, let's bring it to a close now. You know. Anyway, here's our queen right here. You know.
Pineapple pizza.
No, we're not going to do. Yeah, we might do pineapple pizza. Good point there, Angelos. But no, this is the lady that made it happen for us. So anyway, and like I always say, you know, she always gets 4 hearts from me. I mean, she's great. And of course, why is this image here? Because I like it, and because I'm running the stream. And to paraphrase Gowishka, I'm only here for our girl and the Alita Army. Now, before we bring the stream to a close, though, Maxie, are you or Angelus doing the host tomorrow?
I am wifed, so it's Angelus.
Okay.
You better fucking show up this week.
Well, I'm prepared if he doesn't. So
don't tell him that he won't show up. He'll bloody sleep through his alarm again.
Well, I say I'm prepared in that I did the Radio Chaos intro. The intro about where we talk about all things Alita and all that stuff. I did that. So, but anyway, tomorrow we're going to be it's going to be a pretty cool topic, I think, that Brett's going to bring up. About Gurishka should have killed Alita. Now that gets my hackles up, obviously, but we're going to see, what his thoughts are on that. And I'm sure it's going to be a really good stream. So.
So there's a couple more guests. We're having Foxfire on, and also Enigma's coming on. So
nice.
I don't know how long those two guys are hanging around, but they certainly have some stuff to pass on to the fandom.
Yeah,
and this will be Angelus's first time interviewing a special guest, so that'll be interesting.
Yeah,
we'll get to see him strut his stuff.
Can I kick him off if he
doesn't
doesn't
show up?
like pineapple pizza?
You can do what you want, man. You're the host.
I'm kidding, of course.
Of course, you'll have to answer to me when I get back.
Okay, guys. Well, I'm going to bring this thing to a close. But before we do, we always do our call to action, just like we do on the big stream. And that'll be on my count of 3. And that would be 1, 2, 3.
Buy those Blu-rays, baby.